Hey, good people, it's Sammy Ashe, Executive Director of the Ashe Academy and host of our Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. We're back again with another great conversation, but before we get started, we wanted to highlight another nonprofit doing great work in the arts. Mezcla Media Collective is a nonprofit hub for independent filmmakers of color in the Chicago area. Since women of color face challenges working in film that hinder accessibility and career advancement opportunities, they've created this local hub in the Chicago area where people can be provided with resources to enhance their craft by way of creating access to a network, workshops, and a centralized local community. Mezcla also seeks to level the playing field, ensuring that women filmmakers of color are able to participate in their city's bustling media production scene, allowing stakeholders in the industry who are interested in diversity and inclusion to work with the organization to achieve those goals in a deliberate manner. So if you want to get involved, go ahead and go over to their website, www.mesclamediacollective.org. That's www.mesclamediacollective.org, and tell them we sent you. All right, let's get started with the show. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the Ashe Academy's Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. We have singer, songwriter, actress, and my dear friend Tatiana Scott here with us today. How are you?
I'm alive. How are you?
Amazing. So definitely want to talk about your brand new album, Beautiful Struggle. But beforehand, kind of circling with that theme, like what was your journey to the arts? Let's start there. Like
Oh, wow.
explain that beautiful
Okay.
struggle.
Okay. So when I was a twinkle in my mother's eye, no. So when I was like really little, when I was like, I want to say like, my mother will always tell the story that, oh, Tatiana sang before she could talk. Like she was always like humming before. And initially I never believed her, right? I always thought like
Mhm.
moms are being ridiculous, but I have a niece that does the same thing. So now I believe her. So she will always say like, oh, this, she was always gonna be a singer. Like all the women, all the siblings on my mother's side, they all sing, all of them.
Mhm.
And so when I was little, like my parents just played you name every kind of music, it was being played in my house. And so I was always like doing little concerts and stuff. And then when I got to junior high school, there was a talent show. Now, this is before I moved to New York City. I went to Worcester Middle School in Stratford, Connecticut. And they were like, oh, we're doing a talent show. And I was just like, oh, okay. I guess I'll audition. Like you be scared. You like, I got fired, but I'm afraid. I'm scared. And it was the first time that I had like sang in front of people. So I auditioned for the talent show and I got picked to sing in the talent show. And I sang Mariah Carey's I Still Believe. Well, it was actually Brenda K. Starr's song, but I sang the Mariah Carey version. And I sang it a cappella. And I remember when it was over, like everybody was like, "What?" Like, and I remember honestly, it's like one of those things like you see in a movie, you're on stage, there's a spotlight, and it's just dark. Like you can't really see the audience. And I remember I was like so nervous and scared, and I think I closed my eyes the whole time. And then when it was over, people was like, "Yeah!" Like screaming and whistling and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so that's what we're doing." And then I remember my father one night we used to have movie nights at his house, and he was like, "Tonight we're gonna watch this movie called Fame." And I was like,
Or the bug
"Oh,
really set in.
right, right." I was like, "Okay." And then when the movie was over, I was like, "If only there was a real school like that." And he goes, "There is. Do you want to go?" And so I remember we decided like to do it. It was really funny because the auditions for that school happened the year prior to the school year. You auditioned the previous year. And I don't know what happened. My mother called. She called one of the guidance counselors. I don't know what she did. Like, she got some number from somebody. And this is before Google and all that. And she was like, I don't know what to remind. My daughter needs to audition for this school. She got me an audition the day before school started.
Wow.
And I got in and had to move to New York that day. I wasn't even a New York City resident. I like moved to New York. And I
If
remember
that isn't destiny.
it was insane, because I remember thinking, like, I don't know where she got this number from. I don't know what she was doing, but I remember like just being nervous the whole summer. And she was like, I'm taking care of this. Like,
Wow.
I've got this. I don't know what she did or who she spoke to, but she's like, I got you an audition the day before school. And I was like, well, what? I was like worried about everything else. And she's like, no, you just need to get the audition. She's like, and we'll figure everything else out. So then, get the audition. My mother, I think that like at the beginning of that summer, she had decided like, we're moving to New York because you're gonna get into this school. This is before the audition happened. So we got rid of all of our stuff. We were living in this really nice house in Connecticut, and we got rid of all of our stuff. We left the furniture in the house. I think we like had like a jar of quarters, you know, like your jar.
Yep.
Your change.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this like huge jar, and we poured the jar out, and that was the money that we used to move
Gosh.
to New York City. And I remember my father. Now my parents are not; they're divorced. My father helped us relocate to the city. My mother got a room at a friend's house. We stayed with a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then things worked out. They ended up working out because her and the friend like started dating like seriously. So then I got my own room, and it worked out great.
There we
And
go.
we lived in that house. We lived in that apartment for like the first 3 years of high school. And so then of course you get into high school and you're like, it's a whole different world. If you go from like a general junior high where they're not like, you have music class.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. It's just a music class.
Was it like a culture shock for you between the two
Oh yeah.
cities or states? Okay, so
It
what?
was. It was.
Explain that. How was it
So
growing up in Connecticut as
thank
opposed to?
you. Thank you. I love you. You're the best. So living in Connecticut, it's like, to me, I feel like, I'm sure that people who live in New York City would probably like, I'd love to move to the suburb. You know, like, it's nice. I hated it. We lived in this gorgeous. I would say if we could have picked that house up and brought it here, I would have. It was a gorgeous house, but you literally in Connecticut, if you don't have a car, you're not going anywhere. The buses run every 30 minutes, and I lived on this. It lived in this beautiful residential neighborhood, and this on your typical TV show street. And I used to sit on my front porch every day in the summertime with my cat and just watch the bus go by. There was literally nothing to do. Like, if you were playing with your friends, like your neighbors, but other than that, I was just literally sitting there waiting for my life to happen. And I remember I used to like do the concerts in my room in my mirror, and like, I'm gonna get a record deal. Like, I'm moving to New York City, and I'm just gonna be out of here. I'm gonna be a superstar. And when I got to New York, it was like, like there's so much stuff. Like, when you go from just the quiet to the hustle and bustle of like, it's just people in your face, and then the way that people are with each other culturally in the arts. Like, there were things that I had never experienced. Like, now we know me now, like, I'm a hugger and I'm a kisser, and I give and I love, and you say, oh, I love you. When I came here, I was not like that. Like, because I was just afraid. Like, I was like, I'm like a fish out of water. I've never been here before.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get there, and when I got to school, I started as a freshman, and it seemed like everybody like knew each other. And I'm like, how do you guys know each other? Like, this is our first year of high school. Like, and these kids had been like doing this shit for real, like since junior high, like, or younger. I went to school with kids who had been in Sesame Street when they were like 3 and 4. Kids who were like heiresses, like you name it. And I was just like, my name is Tatiana, and I just came here to sing. Like I just want to sing. Like I didn't know. Like I think when my father picked my audition song for the school was Out Here on My Own from the Fame movie. And that was like my only song that I was like, oh, okay, this is the song I'm gonna sing. And it was really like a situation where it shakes you because you're not a big fish in a little pond anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the ocean now. And there are singers that are better than you. They read music, they can dance their asses off, they can pick up a choreo in like 3 minutes. I couldn't do any of that. I still can't. I still can't pick up choreo. I literally was like, oh my God. Like I was just afraid. Like I was just like, oh God, right? And I remember when there's so like my first or second day there was this really nice young man. Oh, but at the time, like I was just so like just like oh Jesus, like I don't know what to do here, right? And my mom is like, she's a black mom, and she were walking in.
Shout out to the black moms.
Shout out to the black moms. My mother fixed her schedule every day at work. She's already working in the city, so she fixed her schedule every day at work so that she could take me to school, go to work, and then taught me how to take the train. Because again, there were no trains in Connecticut. We didn't know what to do. We didn't do that shit. She taught me how to take the train from my school to her job, and I would sit at her job and wait until she got off work, and then we go home together. That happened for like 2 or 3 months. And I remember she's walking me to school, and she goes, don't anybody touch you, don't anybody hug you, don't anybody kiss you, you don't know these people, you can't have a boyfriend, like you just don't get pregnant. Like literally, I think the last thing she said to me before she dropped me off, she was like, if you get pregnant, I'll perform the abortion myself. I love you. Go be great.
Wow.
Go be great. My mother was like, she can love you and threaten you in the same breath. But you took it, and you're like, yes, ma'am. I love you too. And I walked into school, and I remember the guy, like, he introduced himself to me because he was like, I can tell that you're new here, and like he put his arm around me, and he was like, can I walk you to class? And I was like scared because I was like, this is the thing my mother told me not to let happen. She said not to let this happen. And so I was just like, no, you didn't need to walk me to class. And I like took his arm off me. I was like, I'm Tatiana, like reaching to shake his hand. I was like, it's nice to meet you. And that was like my introduction to LaGuardia. And I remember in the moment, like I didn't understand, like this is how creatives are. Like we're touchy-feely people. Like I understand that now. But in my very first,
warm, nurturing people.
Right, nurturing, loving. How does that make you feel? Like one of those. That I just was like, oh my God. I was so freaked out and scared. And I remember like the end of the day, Mom goes, so how did the day go? And I was like, there was this boy, and she's like, what did he do? I was like, he put his arm. What? He did what? She like made this whole thing. I remember she got the dean involved. Like it was this whole mess. And what funny thing is though, is that me and this guy are friends till this day. Like, and every time he sees me, he'd be like, how's your mom? Like where he was just like, I was just trying to be friendly. He's like, I'm so sorry, like I didn't mean it that way. He's like, you're so pretty, and you just look like you were afraid, and I was just trying to be there for you. And my mother was like, no, like.
So how did the transition happen where you're like, I am a New Yorker now?
Oh God, okay.
Comfortable in your skin.
So we used to have these fire drills in high school. And they used to make us, now I don't know if you're familiar with LaGuardia's layout, but LaGuardia High School is right across the street from like the projects essentially. Okay. It's a project I would live in because it's on 56th Street, but it is the projects. So they would line us up against the building at the perimeter of that block.
Mm-hmm.
And one day we were standing out there and somebody dumped, I don't know if it was like their pea pot or what, but they dumped it out the window and I was the lucky person standing there.
Oh no.
And I got covered, like just, and so I was like standing there and I was just like, I'm going to stink for the rest of the day. It was literally maybe my second day or third day of school. And I was like, nope, if I can't do this, like I will be a laughing stock. People will be calling me PP Toddy or something for the rest of my life. So I remember I went to one of the guidance counselors and I told them I had cramps and I wanted to go home and I didn't feel well or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, you can't leave. Like you can't leave, right? And so I remember I called my mother on the phone and I was like, listen, I told her what happened. And she's like, well, I can't leave work, like, she's like, what are you going to do, right? And I was like, I'm going to leave, right? I was like, they told me I can't leave, but I'm leaving. I'm just letting you know so when you don't come pick me up from school. And she was like, do you know how to get home? Are you sure you know how to get home? And I was like, I think I got it. I think I could figure it out, right? She's like on the phone, like, oh my God. I was like, I've got it. I'll call you when I get, like, I think she gave me like a little phone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'll call you when I get in the house, right? So I got on the train, made it all the way home, and it was like a couple of transfers because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know like the easy ways yet. I just knew the one way to get home that we had been doing and practicing. So I got home and I called her on the phone and I was like, I'm home. I'm gonna call you, call you later. And I laid in the bathtub, like I sunk my head down in the water and like came up and I was like, I'm a New Yorker. Like I did it. I
Wow.
made it home. Like if you're not like if you haven't got shit on by a bird, stepped in doggy poo, had something poured on you, you're not a New Yorker. I'm sorry. It's hard to live here. And that was literally my second, it might have been my second or third day here and or there. And I think because I wasn't in school that long before 9/11 happened. Like I literally moved here and then I don't know how many days it was 9/11 happened. And so it was
Oh
like,
yeah, that would be right when school starts, like
yep,
roughly.
right. We were here when 9/11 happened and it was literally we hadn't even lived here that long.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when they made the announcement and I was like the first class I slept through it because it was like a substitute class. So we all just took naps. And then when I woke up,
In
I
the class? You're
yes,
in the class taking a nap?
we all did. The substitute was like, no, you can just do whatever. And they were like reading a magazine or something. I sat in the way in the back and I just went to sleep. And I remember when we left, I remember thinking it was me. Like, oh, you're just groggy. Because you have like them deep naps. And I was just like, oh God, like, oh, why don't, like just the hallway felt different. Like it
Yeah.
didn't feel right. And then we got to, and I was like, what is up? Like, what is going on with everybody? And I got into the second class and the teacher said something. She made some announcement about, we don't know much, but what we know is, two planes crashed into the Twin Towers and, like this is what's going on. And I remember she mentioned something about Times Square. And
So, not to cut you off, but being from like is it considered the tri-state? Do you
yeah,
know those
Connecticut,
do you know those
no,
landmarks living in
no,
Connecticut? So it's
no.
kind of like, oh, that sounds familiar, but I.
Right. The only thing that I knew from New York City was Empire State Building, FAO Schwartz, Fifth Avenue,
Hmm.
for sure. Because we used to come here, my parents would take me on day trips all the time. So I
Hmm.
only knew those landmarks, but I was not familiar with the city like you are, 10 years in. And
Hmm.
then she said something about Times Square, and I remember we used to pass through Times Square to get to school. And so I remember that day my mother had dropped me off, and then she got back on the train and went back through Times Square to go to work. And I was
Hmm.
like, I have to go make a call. Like I remember I stood up, like I was like, I have to make a call. I'm so sorry. And I like ran out the room. Now I didn't know at the time that you can't make a call, you couldn't get through. So I was like standing in the hallway, like freaking out because I couldn't get in touch with my mother. I couldn't get in touch with my dad, you know, like, and I just was like, I'm here by myself. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, am I supposed to leave or should I just wait here? And I remember one of my, you know, another classmate came out and was like, it's going to be okay. You know, like, don't freak out. We're going to be okay. We're in school. We're okay. No matter what happens, we're going to get through this. And literally right as that happened, someone made an announcement over the loudspeaker.
Mm.
Tatiana, can you come to the principal's office? And I was like,
Well, that
okay,
just made things worse. I was
right,
already triggered by calm down. It's going to be all right. Don't
right.
tell me it's going to be all right.
But guess who was in the principal's office when I got there?
Your mom?
Black mothers. She walked through Central Park to get to me. She was like, I don't know what we're doing. She came and got me and we left. I remember we walked. That's honestly one of the ways I learned the city was that walk that day because we
Mm.
walked all the way from school on 66 in Amsterdam to Times Square because we had to go find my mom's boyfriend at the time and he worked on Fifth Avenue. And so we walked through the park, like, and I remember just feeling like we were on this never-ending walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got to Times Square, and Times Square was just like dark. Like I remember, you remember that scene in Will Smith's I Am Legend?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. It felt like the world was ending. And I remember we thought we were gonna have to walk across the bridge to get home, and I don't know how we figured it out when we met up with my mom's boyfriend on Fifth Ave, and then we got to somewhere in that area. He was like, we can take an express bus or something. I don't even remember how we got home. We got on a bus though.
Mm-hmm.
And we got home,
Wow.
and I remember thinking like when we got into our little teeny apartment and we were all sitting on the bed watching what happened and finding out what happened that day. And we were just like, oh my God, like we survived. Like we lived through that. And then I was able to talk to my dad at some point. And I think when my mother got there, she was like, I talked to your father. It's okay. Like he knows where we are. He knows we're okay. I was like, what? Does dad know? Like, and I remember my mother's siblings were like, see, we told you not to move to New York City. We told you. And she was just like,
That's some strong resilience because I would want to get on out of there. Like,
no.
we just moved and this happened. Let's go on
Yep.
back.
And I think I can't remember if I was 14 or 15 when I started high school. I might have been 14. And I remember after that, you would think that I know as an adult now, I handle things like that completely different. Like I'd be like, I'm gonna take a break and just be inside for a couple days. I
Mm-hmm.
got up when school started again. I got up and was like, I'm going to school. I went by myself. I used to get up at, I don't know, like 6 o'clock or earlier than that. It was dark outside when I used to leave to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in not the greatest neighborhood. And we used to get up and just, I used to get up and go. I was like, nah, I'm good. I got this. I felt so strong and so like powerful as a young person. You just have all this energy and you're like, nope, I gotta go to school. Especially in a school like LaGuardia, they teach you it's like about the hustle and about like if you don't show up, someone else will. Like you learn that the first day. So I think I almost never missed school. I might have missed school a couple of times, and it was either like I know one time my dog died, and then a couple other times I was like really sick. But even if I was sick, I did not like to miss school. And
Mm-hmm.
so after that, it was kind of like, nope, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I like what we went through to get here. I'm not going back to Connecticut. So it was definitely a terrifying thing because that was really like my introduction to
Mm-hmm.
New York City. But after that, it was like, well, we're here. So
Well, looking forward as you like kind of move into the music industry, how do you think that time period impacted your like approach to navigating it?
I don't know because I feel like my approach is a very laid back approach. I remember when I was in high school, I was always in a hurry, like always in a rush to get somewhere.
Hmm.
And I had this whole timeline, by the time I'm 16, I'm gonna have a record deal and I'm gonna have a Grammy by this time and I'm gonna do this. Like I'm just gonna be on tour and living my best life. I'm gonna be a superstar. People are gonna be digging through my trash. Like that was when I was in high school, that was me. And then once you realize things just and we were making moves too. Like we were really trying. I was in every after school singing program, every
Hmm.
summer singing program. I was really trying to get my exposure going,
Yeah.
but things just weren't popping off, right? And I would have some people approach me sometimes, but the deals weren't right. And my father, God bless him, both my parents were like, this school, like this doesn't sound right, right? And I remember when I was in junior high school, my father went to school to study music business because
Hmm.
he was like, my daughter's gonna need me one day, so I'm gonna go get a degree in this. And he got a degree in music business, engineering, and management. And then he was interning, and where he interned, he would write out contracts for artists. He worked for a publishing company, and he would write out their contracts, like if they were going on tour, what they required. He was reading their like if someone was making them an offer, a publishing deal or a
Hmm.
songwriting deal, he was reading and writing their contracts out. So when I would get these offers to join a publishing company or get like someone would offer me a songwriter deal, he would read my contract. He's like, no, this isn't right. Or he would literally like,
360 deals where you have
right,
nothing,
listen,
no benefit of it.
listen. He was like, no. And I remember one time I had this I can't remember what singing competition. I don't want to lie. I feel like it was like the NAACP's youth. It was like a youth organization where we'd get together every Saturday
Hmm.
or Sunday at a school, and we practiced the song, and it was all leading up to this singing competition. And if you won the singing competition, you got, I don't remember, but it was like you got something, and it was
Hmm.
like intense something that you wanted. It was like money or something like that. And you had the opportunity to be coached by people in the industry.
Okay.
And I remember this was me and my dad's thing. He would take me every weekend, and we would go. It was off like 96 near the park. We'd go there, do the rehearsals, and then we'd go like have something to eat. And he would talk about, well, he's like, you did really good on this part, but I want you to focus, more. He would give me pointers and stuff. And we would be coached by the professionals of the industry. And when it was over, we got to the singing competition. And I remember the two gentlemen who were the coaches. They were like, we really think that you could do something in the industry. Like they were offering me some sort of record deal or something, and they were like, we have an in with somebody. We would like to introduce you,
Hmm.
that and the third. But I think for whatever reason, like they didn't want my dad to be involved in it. And my dad was like, if I can't be involved, then she can't do it.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, like this is my moment, but I trusted him. I was like, my dad says I can't do it. Like, I was disappointed, but I was like, my dad says I can't do it. I can't do it. Because I remember, like, at some point, someone had a conversation with me and they were like, well, we want to work with you, but, we don't want, your dad. He seems to be, and I was like, oh, well, sorry, that's who you got to talk to, like,
Hmm.
I don't know anything about this business. He does. So that's who you got to talk to. And so I remember that it didn't work out. And I remember when I did the singing competition, I lost. And I'm not someone to brag on. I would like brag on myself. I won the fucking competition. I was the best singer. They made me sing Wendy Moulton's "Come On In Out of the Rain" in full voice. That song is hard as fuck. I sang that song down, okay? And then when they did the judging, I didn't make that one mistake. And then when they made the judging came time, and one of the judges said something, and she literally said, "You sing at a higher level than the rest of these people here, so I'm gonna hold you to a higher standard." And she took a point off for something, and I lost.
Isn't the point that you're singing better than them? It's not your own personal journey. Oh wow.
I don't know. And I remember I lost to a gentleman who sang "I Need You Now." I need you right now. And he did great. Don't get me wrong. He did a great job, but he didn't beat Wendy Moulton's "Come On In Out of the Rain." I'm sorry. If you have to, if there is a chord progression and a key change
And
in
a
that song,
modulation.
there's a bunch of that song is hard to sing. Okay, I didn't skip not one verse. Like, you know, sometimes in the interest of time they'll like cut the song. I sang the whole damn song. I didn't fuck up a lyric, nothing. It was a flawless performance. It might have been my best performance of my whole life, because I remember that I was like, now I'm like, if I fuck up, I fuck up. You know, it's a part of the experience.
Oh
That's
my
the journey.
gosh.
These songs are very emotional, and if I get emotional, that's the experience that you're getting today. I was like, nope, I'm gonna pull off this Grammy. I'm gonna give y'all a Grammy performance today. And I lost to the. I think I placed. It was like top 3. Maybe I topped second place. I don't remember. I did not lose, but I lost. And it reminded me of that scene in Dreamgirls where they do the singing competition, and the guy pays the dude to not let them win, and he was like, they weren't gonna win anyway.
Wow.
And it was kind of like that situation, because the gentlemen were like, well, we have this record deal, like we want to offer you, but your dad, and my dad was like, she doesn't want the record deal.
Wow.
And I remember later on, like, I totally didn't get it at the time, but years later, when I had people come in and make me more offers, and I would always do the same thing. And I remember someone offered me a publishing deal, and this was supposed to be like a big name. He had discovered other major artists in the industry. And I don't know, it was just something like, I went to meet him by myself, and I remember thinking like something in my spirit when I met him, it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. And I remember he wanted me to start working right away before he gave me the contract. And I was like, no, give me the contract and I'll read it and then I'll let you know. And I remember I hung out with him and another songwriter in the studio like overnight, the one night. And then the next day, like, he kept texting me like, I want you to come to the studio. When are you going to come to the studio? And I was like, I'll come to the studio when you send me my contract. I'm not doing any music until I have my contract. And he wanted to offer me a publishing deal, and he finally sent me the contract, and I was like, okay, thanks. And he was like, well, who are you going to have look at it? Because I have some people, if you want someone to look at it, I have some people. And I was like, no, I'm good. I got it. I'm going to take care of it. I never told anybody. Like, people, I love that people would look at me and be like, she's a young girl in the industry. She doesn't know anything. You know, she can be taken advantage of. And I was like, I'm going to have someone look at it. Don't worry. And I remember I brought it to my father. We were at his house, and he was walking through the house screaming. And like, he was reading the lines, right? And he was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I was like, what is happening? He's like, we're not taking this deal. He's like, just tell them no, right? Like, because the guy was like, when I told him no, he's like, don't you want to negotiate? And I was like, no, I don't want to negotiate. Like, I was insulted that that's the deal you came to the table with to begin with. Like, you just trying to fuck me from the jump. Like, you weren't trying to give me any leeway at all. Like, you trying to take full ownership of my shit. Then he wanted ownership of the songs I had written before I'd even met him. Right. And I said to him, I was like, well, why do you want ownership of my songs? And he's like, it's just so that I can market them to, you know, get them placed and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't need to own them to place them. You just need to have my permission to market the music. And so he kept saying, well, you don't, I was like, I don't want to negotiate. Thank you for the offer. I wish you the best of luck. Good day. And he was like, well, whoever's giving you your advice is not doing a good job. I was like, okay, thank you.
You know, what's so important about just highlighting that portion of the business is that there are major artists right now that are going through these same situations where they signed something without reading it because they were so excited. And the not reading it is the part where you're signing over all these rights and you didn't read the terms and conditions, and you end up having to spend all this legal money and
they've literally put so much legal jargon in there that it's like you can't understand here 2/4 and 4th thou and all that. Like, you're trying to all these extra words that don't need to be there. And then I remember there was another time where I had an agreement with a DJ, and his manager brought in a contract, And again, it was just too much legalese, and I wanted to work with him, so I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just draw up my own contract. It's probably gonna say the same thing that yours says, but it's just gonna say it so that I can understand it,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do work together, no problem. His manager was like, who do you think? You bringing in your own contract? This nobody like. We found you kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, you found me and you gonna find this contract too. And I remember because also the contract was written, it was like translated from French because the DJ was French. And he was a joy to work with. Because he was just so, she was like, no, like the manager was like, and he was like, no, I want us all to be comfortable here. He's like, if she's literally gonna write, and I said to him, I was like, I will send you the contract. You can read it, and if you want to make changes to it, we can make changes to it. I think I was in my 20s at the time, and this was at like all with my dad like in my ear, like, this is what you want to say. For a long time, people just were like, they didn't know that my dad was helping me. They were just like, where is she coming from with this stuff? And then after a while, there are certain things that I was just like, you know what? You just finna be my manager because I don't deal with certain things.
Well, let's take a moment to shout out Black dads. We shouted
Black
out Black moms.
dads,
Shout out to Black dads too.
Black moms, because they both co-manage me. And so, like, all that being said, your original question is, how did that affect my approach? So now I'm just really laid back with it. Like, I don't try to jump into things.
Yeah.
I've had some circumstances where I have jumped into things. I have made some mistakes. Luckily, they weren't mistakes that you're like, like you've really messed yourself up. But those mistakes are what made me take a step back. Like I've recorded songs. I have a song out. That's out. It's getting played. It's called A Game. That song I don't get any money from. I don't get any royalties from, even though it's my face on the picture, even though that's my voice and people are listening to the song because of my voice. Now I didn't write the song or anything like that. I think we didn't sign any contracts or anything, but the idea is that I was like a work for hire. So I did not get any paperwork saying, okay, well, we'll give you, they have performance royalties, which is what most singers are getting because people are listening to the song because they want to hear my voice. They like the way I sing the song. I'm the person who,
Mm-hmm.
it's my pizzazz that I put on it, right? I'm not getting any money for that. And I remember that was the first time like I did that deal without telling my father because I got impatient and I was tired of seeing all my friends putting stuff out and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I had nothing. I was like, I've been in New York City. I think I had been here for over 10 years at that point. And I was like, I don't have anything to show for it. I would have been going to like the studio recording songs that just weren't good enough. And I had a coworker was my manager at H&M, and he was like, I want to start like he was like, it's my lifelong dream to put out a song, even if it's just one song. So he like procured everybody, got everybody together, and had this song come out, right? There was that song, and then we did another song together where we did a music video. And it was in a group. And I think the way I ended up being like just the person involved, it was supposed to be two of us initially, but the second girl, her heart really wasn't in it. Like she wasn't really, it wasn't her thing. Like she just wasn't, she was just like, we did a song together, we did the music video. And I remember we did the video, like she just was like, like she could take it or leave it. And I remember when we got to the studio to record, she had to kind of be like coaxed into the studio, like, she had her boyfriend was there trying to like talk her up, and me, I'm like, can we just do that? Like, how many are we going in? Like, I did my part, can I go now? Kind of thing like that. Like, for me, I have been going into the studio for years, like recording my own stuff, and I had like the right connections in terms of people to like guide you and teach you. I have connections with people that they're not going to like co-sign you. They want you to do the work, right? So they're like, I'll be there for you and help you do the work, and I'll mentor you and I'll work with you, but I'm not gonna open the door and get you in like that. You need the grit, you need the hustle, you need to go through the fire, because that's how you stay in it. It's given to you, and then when the minute something gets hard, you're like, I don't want to do this. You know, that's how you know you want it. If you go through hell, and when it's over, you're like, okay, what next? Are we doing that again?
This
Because
is the perfect segue into your
yes,
album, Beautiful Struggle. So
yes.
how did it come to be?
Okay, so Beautiful Struggle was, I had been like writing songs, you know, like, and performing them at showcases and stuff. And I think my father, of course, he found some songwriting competition, right?
Hmm.
WNYC, which is a radio station here, was hosting like something called Battle of the Boroughs. It was a songwriting competition, and he was like, you're gonna submit to them two of your songs, right? Or one of your songs. I think at the time it was the only like real song that I had really been performing. It was called Wake Up Call, and
Remember that song?
it's a cult classic. The real folks who the friends and family who've been with me since day one know that song. It's not gonna get released though, because I'm still trying to get the producers to get on board. But anywho, that we had done that song, we submitted it, right, and we got to, they picked me, and I was like, oh shit, like, and it was a legit production. Like, when you get there, there's like, it's lit, like, it was professional. You had great lighting and cameras and angles, and they were like, we're gonna live stream this, and it was just a great experience. And I remember I lost. I made it to the top 5, right?
Hmm.
It's like out of 20 people, you get to the top 5, and then you have to vote through like following. So you have to like, you know, push your social media.
Yeah.
And this was at the very beginning of Instagram, and so Facebook, and you know, was like the height of my, like, that's what I was pushing. And I remember we lost, right? And so I was like, it's fine, we'll do it again. It'll be okay. And I remember through like from then to the next one, like we had just gone through a lot. Like, living in New York City is really difficult when you're trying to do it on your own. Like, my mom and I, we had to keep relocating because like the rent situation in New York City is a sham. And I remember we got evicted a couple of times, and we were like sleeping on friends' couches, or we would have to split up. Like, I would end up like staying with my boyfriend, and she would have to go stay with family. And during this process, I was still acting, I was still working, I was
Hmm.
still auditioning, and I was still performing at showcases. So I started writing songs in general. And then I remember I was staying at my dad's house with my grandmother, and we went through like this terrible ordeal because my grandmother was sick and she wasn't telling anybody. She didn't tell anybody that she was dying. And a sign of like when older people have cancer is they just become very mean, and they start making these like irrational decisions.
Hmm.
And I remember my grandmother, like, she essentially said she didn't want me there. And I remember at one point it was my mother and I both staying with my dad and his mother. Now they're divorced. Like, and me and my mom were sleeping in one room, and this is what like sitcoms are made of. And I remember at one point, like, my grandmother, she just didn't want us there. And my younger cousin was coming to visit. And even though he had a grandmother who lived down the street who he could stay with,
Hmm.
my grandmother basically was like, you guys need to get out. Like, she didn't say this to us, but there were conversations happening,
Yeah.
and they kept the like, they were trying to keep it from me. Like, my father was trying to keep it from me because he was trying to work it out. And I remember my grandmother, like, she was just going hard. Like, she just didn't want us there. And so I remember I left. And I remember I left my mother there because I was like, I cannot. Like, I was like, I'm going through so much shit. I'm still going to work. I'm still trying to make it as an actress. Like, I literally was going on auditions, doing headshot, you name it. Like, that shit did not stop. I was still
Hmm.
doing it in the midst of being displaced and living out of a suitcase. And I remember I called my boyfriend and he was like, well, you know, you can always come stay with us. And we squeezed into that. His mom has a 2-bedroom apartment. God bless her. And she had everybody in there. She was like, no, anytime somebody needs a place, she'll just come over. It's fine. And so I think it was like 4 or 5 of us in there. And it's just doing it. And I remember I was writing songs. And then when it was all over, I remember my mom and I had done a play, a showcase, and something else, all while we were still looking for a place to live. And there would be sometimes based on where the auditions were happening, I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night. So I would literally take my suitcase with me from audition to wherever, to work to wherever. And then that night I would decide, well, am I going to go back to my dad's or am I going to stay with my boyfriend? And I remember we finally found an apartment. We went through this for almost a year. And it wasn't that we didn't have the money. It was that the real estate industry is like corrupt. And they want you to make like you can have the money to move in, but they're like, you need to make 40 times the income. You need to have like a 720 credit score and all that. And it's like, if I had 40 times the income, I wouldn't be living in the Bronx. Like, let's be clear. We finally find this apartment, right? And the address, the number on the building was 747. And I remember we went through hell. We thought we weren't going to get this apartment because the landlord was like playing hardball. And I was like, oh God, like and we moved into that house and I had my own bathroom. My mother had a bathroom in her. It was a 3-bedroom apartment. It was gorgeous. And we were like, we're going to use this 3rd bedroom as our closet. Like the rent was not expensive. Mm-hmm. And when I moved in and you go through kind of a post-traumatic stress as someone who's constantly been displaced. You get in your apartment and you feel like, how long am I going to be here before, something goes wrong, before the landlord starts tripping and trying to raise my rent or whatever. And when I finally had that moment of you're in your apartment, you're going to be okay, it's going to be okay, I sat down and I wrote 747. And that's why the first line is said, only God can judge me, because I had stopped talking to my grandmother. Like, you were not there when the whole world turned their back on me, walked it even when I was scared. Because I would literally be like going to work crying. Like I'd be walking down the street crying because I was just like having a bad day. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to learn from this. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. We used to go to storage when it was time to like get new clothes. Mm-hmm. Like if the season changed and we needed to get warmer clothes, like I had set up storage like a closet so that I could just go in and pull stuff off. Like you learn to pivot. And that's basically what Beautiful Struggle is about, because I was struggling and there were all these beautiful moments that would happen throughout. And so it's just when you were literally about to like lose your shit and feel like you were going to jump off a bridge, someone would call you and be like, hey, do you want to do background work today on a movie or a TV show? And I'd be like, okay. And I was having those checks sent to my mother-in-law's house, to my boyfriend's house. And she would call me and she'd be like, Tata, your income tax, your W-2 came today. I'm going to leave it for you. And like, she was like, we were just working a system here. Yeah. And it was just, that album is a culmination of all the stuff that we've gone through, not just as an actress, a singer, or just someone trying to have a human experience or living the human experience or just trying to survive or trying to live, someone doing this all while Black. Yes. Because it's a completely different struggle when you're Black. And then I wrote the title track of Beautiful Struggle, Tell Me What Happens to a Dream Deferred. She works at H&M folding shirts. Because I remember I would go, like, I would have a showcase the night before and I'd be like on the moon. I'd be like, oh my God, I performed my songs and people loved it. Or, coming down from the high of like when we did the second Battle of the Boroughs, even though again, I still didn't win, they let me sing 2 songs. Mm-hmm. And I sang 747 as one of the songs, and then I sang Free Fall, which was another one. And like just just the way it was received, like people were just like, yeah, like when it's over, like, woo! You get all this, you know, affirmation, like you're doing what you're supposed to do. And I remember that night my father had like he'd got a hotel room across the street from the venue because it was downtown in the city. And he was like, I forget what we had the sound check earlier that day. And then he was like, yeah, we're going to be in the city all day. So I'm just going to get you a room and we can go over it. You can go to the sound check. We'll go sound check. And then we'll go to the hotel. We'll get ready and we'll freshen up. And one of my friends, TJ, was doing like a magazine at the time. And he came while I was getting ready and interviewed me. And like, it just was, my father gave me the rock star experience. And so I remember when it was over, he was like, well, I'm going to go back to Connecticut. I'm just going to go home, but the room is paid for. So my mom and dad refer to my husband and I as the kids. So him and my mom were having a talk and he's like, hey, Gwen, I'm going to go back home. Do you want me to take you home? The kids can have the room. They can just stay here. And I remember it was always my dream to like spend a night like in the city. Now, of course, I was fucking exhausted because we had done all this prep. So my father literally left me in the room like this. But like, just still, he was just like, yeah. And then the next day we checked out and we're like, oh, you know, like you had your little thing. Like I did a show, I had sound check, I had an interview, I stayed in my hotel room, and then you'd have to go back to fucking H&M and deal with customers who were like, what do you mean I have this in a small? Or they'd come and like fuck up your table, or you'd have management like on your ass about, oh, you didn't square fold this properly, or we need to size sticker this whole stack. We didn't have a perfect close because we're having a visit. And all the shit that they did that was just so last minute and unorganized. And you're just like, I fucking hate this job. And then you would do all that for no money. And I remember at the time, like my mom was a manager with the company at the time. And I remember when I interviewed with them, they didn't know she was my mother. And so we were sitting there doing an interview and they were like, you know, you remind us of somebody who works here so much. And they were sitting there, what's her name? You know, Gwen. And I was like, yeah, that's my mother. They're like, what? That's your mom. Now, this was at the end of the interview. They were saying like, okay, we'll bring you in. Like they had already like said, you know, we're going to we're going to hire you. And then when it was over, you know, like the interview's over and you have like, you know, small talk. Mm-hmm. And they were like, wait a minute, that's your mom? Seriously? And I was like, yeah. And I remember I had asked them to schedule the interview on the day she was off, so that she wasn't there. And they had no idea I was related to her. And so after that, when they found out that she was my mom, and she was such a good manager for that company, they were like, oh, they basically just tried to like throw everything at me. And I became like the super sales associate. Like I did everything. And I remember like your one sales associate is supposed to have like 2 sections, but you're supposed to have like 2 or 3 people helping you. You're not supposed to be doing it by yourself all day. And they used to leave me in the section alone. There was just so much stuff. By the time I got ready to leave that company, because I was just like, you know what? I'm supposed to be singing. Like I remember when I quit the company, I was working at the location in Harlem. I didn't quit. I went on disability and just never went back. I was working at a theater, so I worked on, I think that's Lenox. The H&M is on Lenox, or no, Adam Clayton Powell, right? So this is Adam Clayton Powell. I was working at the Faison Fire Theater over here on 125th and St. Nick or Morningside. And then I go to 123rd and 3rd Avenue. So I was just like, I remember they were closing my location. They closed the 5th Avenue store down and they were like, well, where do you want to go? And I had already had these jobs. And I was like, y'all just go to Harlem. So I could just run up and down the street when I needed to go to work. And I remember like at one point working there was literally making me sick. Like, and that's why I went on disability, because I was like, I had another job. I was a hostess at a restaurant as well, all the way, like on 42nd Street. So I had like 4 jobs at once, and I was just like, and I think the H&M and the restaurant job are the only jobs that were paying me. The other jobs are, well, no, Faison pays. Let me go on the record and say that George Faison pays people more than $30. Anyway, way more. Go work for George Faison, and you meet all the people that you need to meet. He hangs out with legends. Okay. Now that that's said, I met Cicely Tyson at a Faison.
Wow.
Like,
Talk about a legend.
changed my life. Anyway, so
How did it change your life? How did meeting her change your life?
well, it was one of these events where it was actually the repast. His Faison's husband had passed away. A shout out to Tad Schnug. He was like our other dad. He was the sweetest man, and he passed away. And we went to the funeral, and we had the repast at the Faison Firehouse. Now I don't know if you're familiar with Faison Firehouse, but it's a converted firehouse. Okay, it has a theater, a nightclub, a dance studio, and then Faison had his apartment on top. He lived there. So we're like, why do we need to go anywhere? We can have the repast here. So we're like the kids of Faison. So we were like hanging out, and we were like serving and making sure there was, everything they needed, right? So we finally get to sit down and eat, because we were making sure all the guests ate first. And there was nowhere to sit. So I was like sitting on one of the stairwells on the 2nd or 3rd floor, like between the dance studio and the apartment. And I was sitting there like, Cicely Tyson is standing in front of me, and she needs to get up the stairs. So she was coming up on the side I was sitting on. So I went to scooch over, like, everything fell, and I went to like move, and she's like, you better not move. And I was like, no, mother, I can disappear if you need. What do you need me to do? And she's like, you better stay right there. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she like walked up the stairs. She's like, I've got this. And she walked up the stairs. She has a really nice gentleman who's with her. He's God forgive me, I can't remember his name right now. He's a fashion designer, but he's like a very, very close friend of hers. They do everything together. And so he like, she usually like holds on to him. So she's coming up the stairs, and she like, her hand comes over my head because she's holding on the rails right here. And she comes over, and I'm just like it's like Jesus walked by, and she's like, see? And the whole time she's talking to me, she's like, I got it, I'm good. She's like, now eat your food, baby. And I was just like, I was like, I could die now. I met Cicely Tyson. And when she walked by, it was just like her skirt. And I remember I went and told one of the other kids, one of the other Faison kids, I was like, Gregory, come here. Come here. And he comes over, and I was like, Cicely Tyson just yelled at me. And she walked by me in her skirt. It was like the skirt. He's like, did you touch the hem of her garment? I was like, yes, I did. He was like, was it like Jesus? I was like, it was. Like, I thought it was just Oprah was there, Gail was there, Felicia Rashad. Like, there are too many. Every Black legend, Valerie Simpson of Ashford and Simpson, because Nick Pat, like,
wow.
Every Black icon you could think of.
Well, just being in the room as an actress, that had to be amazing.
You were just, and then you had to go back to fucking H&M. And it has nothing to do, don't get me wrong here, it doesn't have anything to do with the company. It's just the fact of retail in general. Any job that is not your passion, it's gonna suck after a while. And I had been working in retail since I was like 16. I didn't leave until I was almost 30. And I literally left because it was making me sick. Like, it was tearing my body down physically. Working at H&M, it's a hard job. There's constant bending and, you know, like you fuck up your back and all kinds of stuff. And I remember I went to my doctor and he was just like, you can't work. Like, you need to quit your job. And I was like, I can't quit my job. Like, I need the money. Like, you know, like I have headshots that I need to do some new headshots. I'm going to take an acting class. Like, he was like, nah, you're quitting. And so after I quit that, like I went on disability. And when I went on disability at the time now, I was part-time, but I worked like a full-timer. I was always there. And I remember my manager at the time told me, well, hun, why don't you go on disability? And then when you come back, you know, we'll take care of it. Part-timers can't go on disability.
Wow.
And I did not know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, you now looking back on it, you're like, that was God, because I didn't want to go back anyway. And I think I had been on disability for like, who knows? Like I was gone, okay? I'll go in there, like I would go in there and buy stuff. And then my coworkers would be like, when are you coming back? Like, or I remember like I ran into some of them on like just out. And they'd be like, are you okay? Like, are you coming back? And I'm like, I don't know. And then so when I finally was like, okay, I need to go back because, you know, government benefits ain't shit, especially when you're a part-time worker. I wasn't making, you know, like I just couldn't take care of myself. And so I went to go back to work and I called the disability company or whoever, Cigna, and I was like, oh, I want to go back to work now. And she was like, they've rejected all of your disability claims because part-timers don't get disability. So basically, the manager knew that when he told me to go on disability. Now, personally, I like to think that he didn't do this with malice intent. I like to think that he was like, she don't need to be here. Because the relationship I had with this manager, personally, I felt like this, I have to take it that way because I don't see him trying to do this. Like, we're just going to fire her. Like, this is the nudge she needs. Right. And the whole time that I was on disability, I really wasn't working because I couldn't. But I was like, you know, keeping in touch with my actor friends and, you know, keeping my hand in some things and putting out some fillers out and stuff. So when I found out that I couldn't go back to work, I was like, oh, you know, like I was like upset for a little bit. And then I had a friend call, like he texted me or he might have messaged me on Facebook Messenger. And he was like, what are you doing tomorrow? Or Wednesday, next Wednesday. And I was like, nothing, why? And he was like, we're doing, he's like, I work with the Harlem Gospel Choir. And I do some work for them, and he's like, their core choir is out in Europe right now. This was in November, sometime around. And I was like, okay. And he's like, and we need people to do the Christmas tree special, the Christmas tree lighting. NBC will pay you. And I was like, first off, I wasn't doing shit. So if it was free, I would have gone for free if there was no pay involved. And then the whole time I kept saying, okay, yeah, no, I'll be there. And the whole time I kept like still not registering that this is like a big deal. I was like, oh, my friend is, he needs singers. It was, you know, it was his job to procure singers. And so I was like, okay. And I went, and it was like a 2-part job. Like, so you go down to the studio and you record your parts as a choir. And then that's like they use a backing track. So when you tape the live taping, you're singing, you know, to your backing track or whatever. And so when we get there, we were there for like maybe 4 or 5 hours. It was real chill. Like, sit down in your seat, put your headphones on, sit in front of your microphone. You're in a state-of-the-art studio somewhere in the village, and you're just like, okay, like, all right. And it was a thing of, they were like, well, you don't get paid until you complete the job. So you do the studio session first, you do the taping for the lighting special, and then they send you a check. And I was like, no problem. You know, like, I'm not doing anything.
Well, you said in your head, you're like, I would do it for free. So
for free. Right. And I remember when he said to me, he was like, well, it's NBC scale. Now, at the time, I didn't know what NBC scale was. So I was just like, okay, great. when we got there and we did all the Christmas tree stuff, and it was so funny because I had a show like after the Christmas tree lighting. One of my homies had a showcase and we did a song together, and I needed to be there to sing a song with him, and it was in Brooklyn. And so I remember, like, we went to the rehearsal for that, and my friends were
Sounds like
like,
Hollywood.
yeah, it was Hollywood.
Shout out to Hollywood.
Hollywood! And he was like, yo, you gonna make it to the show? Because that's like, he's like, that's the Christmas tree lighting that you're doing. And he's like, that's live. And I was like, nah, no, it's not. No, it's not. I was like, no, it's not. And I'll be there. Like, no, still no idea. So the whole day we were there, we were in Rockefeller Center, and they put us where they shoot SNL.
Mm-hmm.
So like when we were in there, right, and our changing room, right, and we go in the changing room, and I'm like, this looks familiar. Like it was the set of Late Night with Seth Meyers, and I watched Seth Meyers like religiously. I was like, oh,
It took you a long time to put
oh
two
my
and two
God.
together.
But honestly, I prefer it that way because I don't freak out.
Yeah.
If I'm the type of person who, if I can minimalize a situation or it's minimal in my mind, I can approach it with ease. Like, I don't be freaked out. I just be like,
Because it's not happening until it happens. So if you're
right.
like, oh, this is a really big deal leading up to really, really
Right.
big deal.
You have anxiety.
Something falls through. You're
Right.
like, okay, well that.
You be tripping and all stressed. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, wait a minute, right? And then they put us in another room, and it was where they shot SNL, was where we ate dinner.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I was so impressed with like their tea assortment. Like I was like, yo, like I was like, they have throat curl here. I'm shocked. Like, cause my dad and I, we're tea connoisseurs, and I'm used to going to places where they just have Lipton and like regular tea. And I was like, yo, they done pulled out the spread, okay? And I think they were also like filming, oh God, what's the other guy's name who does the late night shows? Jimmy
Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon was like filming too. Like, so you're just walking through the halls and there's just like all these random people. And I remember we were in the bathroom and I was singing, like practicing my part to make sure my voice was good. And this girl comes out of the stall and she's like, oh my God, your voice is so beautiful. And I'm like, oh, thanks, girl. You know, I'm just trying. Have a good day. You be good. And I walked out the room. And then later on, when we were in Rockefeller Center, they have this restaurant, this big Italian restaurant. That's where they were holding us all. Mm-hmm. And I saw one of my other choir mates, me and her kind of had similar wigs on that day. And she went over to go talk to Tori Kelly, or Tori Kelly approached her or something. I don't remember. But I saw her talking to her. And then I saw my friend pointing to me, like, yeah, me. And so I got up and went over there. And she goes, this is the young girl you met in the bathroom. And I was like, wait a minute.
Oblivious.
I was like, that was you in the bathroom? She was like, yeah. I was like, wow. Like, but I think also, too, is I try not to get starstruck. Mm-hmm. I really like talking to celebrities like they're people because I know they appreciate that. They don't want to bond over and like, oh my God. And I remember she took a picture. She's like, let's take a picture together. And I was like, okay, like, yeah. Like, it was like the best night of my life. And it was on the anniversary of my grandmother's passing. It was a 1-year anniversary of her passing. And I remember thinking like, every year, like the year she passed, the day she passed, when they were taking her out, the way our house was set up was like you couldn't bring the like the cart in, like they had to carry her out, and they had to create like a human chain and pass her through the hallway and carry her out. And right when they were carrying her out, it's like the moment where you feel like, okay, this is my moment to like lose my shit. My phone rings and it's someone from casting and they're like, hi, we wanted to know if you can work on Orange is the New Black. I have been trying to get on Orange is the New Black for 3 years. Wow. And they called me to be in their final season. Ashe, and I'm on the phone, the lady's talking to me and they're taking her out. like her, like in her like the end of like they were about to close it, and it was like I was looking at her, and it was like, yeah, you got it. Tell them you're available. Like I was literally crying on the phone. I was like, my grandmother just died, but I'll be there. I was like, can you just send me the information and book me now? I'll be there. And I hung up the phone, and I remember after that, like we had gone through like preparing and doing all the funeral stuff, right? And I went and shot Orange is the New Black, went back home, and we went and did her funeral. Then she had two
You're
services.
gonna have to tell us which episode you were on, because
I was on, so in the end, I think they ended up cutting me out, period.
Okay.
But I was in the last episode for Poussey.
Okay.
I was in Poussey's, was that her like the night where she was about to get out of the drug game, and it was like the night that she ended up in jail.
Mm-hmm.
I was in that episode. It was a club scene, like 'cause she was at a club and she met somebody. I don't remember. And of course, at the time, they don't tell you what you're filming for.
Yeah.
They don't tell you what you're filming for. They don't
Because
even
there's
tell you.
flashbacks in the show, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. But to me though, when it was all over with, I remember when it aired, and I was like, oh my God, I was in like the most important episode of the entire season, and it was also important for me because I remember my mom had wanted me to go on Orange is the New Black as like, she's like, try to get a job as an inmate. And I was like really immature at that time. And I might still be immature now, but I was just like, I need to be me, like I was really superficial at the time. Like I was still coming into my own as an actress. And there are things that I just like, I'm not cutting my nails. I'm not taking off my wig. I'm not like, I'll do no makeup, but I'm not doing that. And I remember also they wanted me to come in for background work, and they didn't tell me prior that, oh, you can't have this and you can't have that. And I remember when they called me and they were like, oh, well, now you can't have your nails. And the shoot was in the morning.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm not cutting my nails. and I was like, I'm not coming. And because I was like, it's for background work, you're going to pay me $100. And that's how much it costs to get my nails done. So no. And I remember like my mom was so mad at me. She's like, I can't believe it. My father was like, what the fuck, Ty? Like he was so upset. He was like, God damn it, Tatiana. This is really? We would have gotten your nails done again. Like you're being ridiculous. And I was just like, no. Because I think that there is this, it's true for some people, but it's not been true for me. When they're like, oh, you can get discovered as on background, and they could pick you out of the crowd and make you a lead. That's not how that works. That's not how that shit works. Okay, you have to be union first for that to happen. And as it seems, I'm not going to be union anytime soon with regards to SAG. So no. And
Wow.
I remember like they were so upset with me, and there were just a lot of things that I learned overall. And I remember when I was in high school, my high school boyfriend introduced me to like Talib Kweli. He was like really woke, and he listened to Mos Def and Black Kanye, and we were just like, I was just like, oh my God, he's just so deep, and he just knows so much, and he's just so smart. And he played me Talib Kweli's album, The Beautiful Struggle. And my favorite song on that that I listen to all the time was called Black Girl Pain. And for those of you who are not familiar with that song, it's basically how he raises his black daughter with pride. I keep her hair braided, bought her a black Barbie. Like that was my shit. And I used to listen to that so much, and everything I did, I was like, this album is so deep. And I was like, yep, I was like, it is a beautiful struggle. Like I was like, it really is. This shit is hard. But I wouldn't want it any other way. Like, and I remember my favorite thing to tell people is that I lived a really charmed life in Connecticut. I lived in this huge house with a full backyard. I had an apple tree, walk-in closets, an attic, a finished basement, panic room, laundry, you name it was in that house. multiple luxury rooms. It's nothing like living in New York City where you have the bedroom, the bathroom, the living room, if you're lucky, and a kitchen.
Yeah.
I had a den. I just fireplaces. I could hide in multiple places in my room. My bedroom was half the size of one of my apartments, my first apartment. And I hated it. I was miserable. I was like, there's nothing to do here. I can't make my money. Like, I can't make my music. I'm literally sitting outside watching the cars go by. I want to go to New York and I want to go to open mics and I want to struggle. I want to be in pain. I want to feel things so that I can write music. I want to hurt and cry. And God was like, okay, that's what you
Got
want?
what you wish for.
That's what you want to do? God, say less.
So
Say
what
less.
would you say would be the most challenging part of putting this album together?
Paying for it. That's on period.
That's real. That's real.
Period. It certainly wasn't writing it and getting it together because I have a group of musicians, like my brothers, like I call them and they be like, say when. Like, it's not an issue. It was getting the money to pay for it. We recorded this album at Kilgore Studios. I don't know if anyone's familiar with John Kilgore. John Kilgore is a triple OG of recording music. His studio is located in Hell's Kitchen, which is right off of Times Square. So everybody in Broadway has run up in there. If you've watched something on Jimmy Fallon Saturday Night Live or Seth Meyers or Colbert that was related to music, it got recorded there. Mm-hmm. And the man has Grammys, okay? Like, it's just a legendary place to be. It's like this really chill studio you go in, and I don't remember what the rate is, but it's not your homie's rate. Okay. And I remember like we like my father would be adamant about we're going. I was like, we could just record it, at my homie's house. He's like, no. And then I remember I told him I wanted a live band, right? It's funny because my father was like, well, what do you want to do for this album? Like, And I remember every time we performed, like we were performing these songs long before we did this album. And we would perform them as we would write them. So we would have a showcase and then I'd be like, oh, I wrote this new song I want to try out. And we'd rehearse it. And it was like, okay, we're going to add that to the lineup. And that's just how it happened. And my father was like, I think we have an album. Like, he was like, it was supposed to be an EP. And he was like, no, we have too many songs now, so we're gonna do a whole album. And we just liked the way it sounded with the live band better. Even if I had songs that were given to me as beats and I wrote them on the beat, I converted to a live band because I just needed the live band. I was like, I was trying to sing to a track and it wasn't the same thing. So it just didn't give me the same energy. So I was like, no, we're going to get a live band. And so he was like, you said you want a live band. You can't do that at your friend's house. I'm going to go get you a studio where they have all the instruments and you can perform it like that. And he was like, I'm going to take you to the best. Like, you're going to get the best. And I'm like, Dad, and we don't, no. Like, it was funny because I just wanted to get the music out there. Yeah. And he was like, we're going to do this right. And so he took me to John Kilgore, and John Kilgore introduced me to Charlie Rosen, who was like a masterful arranger. Okay. He's done like arrangements for so many people. And my dad, it was funny because we had recorded I Don't Choose You and Liar. And he was like, those are going to be the singles. And he's like, I'm hearing strings. Like my father's sitting there and he's like, I'm hearing strings and yeah, I think we need some violins. And now I was like, this song is fine. He was like, nope, these singles they're not gonna know what hit them when they come out. You're gonna. So he
shout out again to your
the Black Dads.
There we go, Black Dads, because that great decision.
So he's like, ask John, who do you know? And John is like, yeah, I got a guy, and he brings in Charlie, and Charlie brings in all these different musicians to record. And I wasn't there. I think I wasn't there that day. I had gotten there late, but they had the session with the musicians for Liar. And he said, he's like, we had to keep muting the vocal track because one of the violinists had just broken up with her boyfriend, and she kept
Oh.
crying liar. And I was like, I wasn't there. I remember my father, when I got there, and he was like, you missed it. You missed it. I was like, what happened? He was like, this song is so good. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, it made one of the violinists cry. He's like, she performs on late night shows and she does this shit all the time, and she was in here crying. And I was like, oh my God, is she okay? He was like, no. He's like, this song is good. He's like, people are gonna be in their feelings. I was like, okay. So we did that, and he goes, now we need music videos. I'm like, the fuck? Can we just put this shit out, please? I was like, can we just put it out? Like, he's like, nope. We need videos, and then we're gonna go do a photo shoot, and we're gonna get you an album cover and all this stuff. And that's how we ended up, like, it all costs money. Some of the stuff we were able to do like ourselves, but like the album shoot and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the singles, I went to again, my friend TJ. I went to him because TJ's a photographer, a singer, like a creative everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, he's like, I want to do shoots for your project. Now initially we were like, we were gonna give him the album cover. And I remember, like, we have been trying to go to this sunflower field like all year, because sunflowers, my grandmother used to plant sunflowers for me. So after she passed away, I had started seeing sunflowers everywhere all over New York City in urban places. I've been living in certain areas of the Bronx for years and never saw sunflowers, and they were tall ones.
Wow.
And I remember my husband started seeing them, and he would start taking pictures. Like, he was like, babe, there's sunflower. Like, I remember one neighborhood we lived in, and there was a sunflower garden that had not been there. And every time I saw sunflowers, I was like, all right, Grams, okay. Like, all right, I hear you. Because it was like, when she, like, I stopped talking to her for a really long time. And then when she got sick, when it finally came out, she never told anybody she was sick. And she had an incident. They took her to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors told my father she has cancer. And it's bad. She had cancer for a whole year, 2 years before she said anything.
Mm.
And by the time the doctors told us, it was too late. And so I remember when they came and got me at work. My mother and Orlando came and got me at work and didn't tell me they were coming. Like, they just showed up, and they were like, we're leaving. And I'm like, I'm on the clock. And she's like, I already called your manager and told her you clocked out. Get your stuff. And they walked me to the train station on 125th and put me on the train. And they're like, your father's going to pick you up at the station. And he took me home, and he was like, things just aren't going well. And of course I'm still like, okay, why am I here? Because where are the other cousins at that are supposed to be here that she loved more than me? Where are they? And I remember one of the cousins who I always had, we used to have these issues because he was the favorite, and he was always putting out the least effort. Like, I was the oldest, only female grandchild, and I was like, one day Grum's not gonna be here. I need to be able to tell her story and talk to her about people. My younger cousins might come to me one day and want to know about her. So I would always make an effort. I would go visit her all the time and sit by her and randomly, Grandma, tell me about growing up. Just random. My grandmother wasn't a person who liked to talk about growing up, but she would talk to me. And I was always upset because I was like, she doesn't love me the way she loves everybody else. Or so I felt. And when she was dying, I had to go take care of her. My father was taking care of her, and he was taking care of her during the day, and then he would work overnight, and he was running himself ragged, and he ended up catching pneumonia. And I remember my Orlando and I went over there, and we were looking at him, and we were just like, you just don't look good. you need to go to the doctor. And he was like, I'm fine. He looked like he was dying. And I was like, you need to go to the doctor. And I don't know what my mother said to him. She had a Gwendolyn conversation with him. And he's like, fine, I'm going to the doctor. And we go in the hospital. It was the same hospital my grandmother was in. And he was like, I'm just here to prove my ex-wife and my daughter wrong, that I'm not sick. And we were there for a couple hours. And then the doctors were like, it's a good thing they made you come in because you have walking pneumonia. And if they had waited a day or two, you would be dead.
Yikes.
And they were like, you have to take off work and you cannot go near your mother. So I moved into the hospital with her. And we were in hospice, and I lived in the room with her for like, not that, it was only like maybe 4 or 5 days, and it was over like the Thanksgiving period.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I would stay with her throughout the night, throughout the day, and then on Thanksgiving, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, I went home and cooked like all the sides. My aunt came and cooked the turkey because I wasn't finna even attempt. And I cooked all the sides, and then I think I had time to take a shower, and then I went back to the hospital. And I spent Thanksgiving in the hospital. They had to bring me food.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sent her home on Black Friday because she didn't want to go home, and they sent her home. And I remember the whole time we were there, it's just like there's something that happens when it's just the two of you in a room and God. And you're like, there are all these things that get revealed that it's like, why couldn't this have been said? All you had to do was explain this. And the thing is, like, she wasn't talking or anything. Like, there were just certain things that would happen. Like, I remember when the nurses would come in and check on her, or they had to change her or something, and I would say, do you want me to hold you, or do you want the nurse to hold you? She said, I want you. Like, and she would reach out, like one night she reached out and grabbed for my hand, and I was just like, and like, I was like, I don't know what to do here. Like, I was just so confused. And it was just one of those things where it was just like, okay, well, I get it now. And then I remember after she passed away, like we came home. We put her in her room, and we played music for her, and we sit with her and read to her. I would sit next to her and crochet because she taught me how to crochet. And it was just getting too heavy. Like, I had to leave. I feel like I'm like OD spiritual, I'm not even trying to be. It's just, I think who we are as people of color and, you know, our ancestry, and I could literally feel her in the room, like, and it was just too much. And I was like, I have to go. Like, I told my dad, I was like, you don't have to take me. I'm gonna take the train home. I just gotta be out. Like, I just can't stay here. And I remember I told her, I said, I'm gonna leave. And I told her, I was like, you need to let go. I was like, everybody's gonna be okay. Because there was a lot of, you know, when parents die, and, you know, it's a lot of bullshit that happens in the family. And she was worried about that stuff. And she was already gone. And I remember the nurse came, and they were like, it's gonna be really soon. And I remember telling her, like, you know, it's okay. Everything's gonna be okay. You can let go. We're all gonna be fine. You need to let go. And I left, and I was at home the next day. I was gonna go hang out with my best friend because I just needed to, like, get drunk and, like, not feel. And I was running late as usual, and I was getting dressed to go over there, and my Orlando and Gwendolyn show up. They're both supposed to be at work. I think I walked out the room to, like, go to the bathroom, and they're coming down the hallway. Now, first I'm trying to figure out how they got in the house and I didn't hear them. But they're, like, coming down the hallway, and I'm like, what the hell, man?
It can't be good. Can't not be good.
Right. I was like, the two of them together is never a good sign. I was like, what happened now? And Noel knew my best friend, he knew the whole time. My mother had called him first, and she was like, I know Tati's supposed to be coming over there. And he's like, no, you know, she always running late. Like, he's like, she didn't leave the house yet. And so she was like, well, stall her. Like, she told him what happened. And he was like, it's okay. Don't trip. Take your time. You know, take a shower. Do what you need to do. And then they called. I was like, I need to call Noelle. And she was like, Noelle already knows. And they took me over there to see her because I wouldn't let them. I said, don't let them take her until I get there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, that honestly, like all of that, we had been recording the album while that stuff was going on. And we had to stop when she got sick.
Okay.
Because we had to put our money into burying her.
Yeah.
And I think she literally left us enough money to bury her. That was it. We didn't have and we had to she had 2 services. She had one in Connecticut and one down south where we buried her. And we were just like dealing with that, even though I think it only took a week. It affected me for the next, I don't know, 6-7 months, almost a year, because it's like you're holding someone's hand and you're literally holding their hand, waiting for them to die. It's like you usher them to the gate, and then the gates open and they go in, and then you're just left standing there. And even though it's a moment where you're like, you're grateful for all the things that you learn in the moment, or the way that you come to some sort of reconciliation or understanding, those are all beautiful things. But then in the end, you're just like, somebody fucking died. Like that's some real shit. Like, and that's when you become faced with your mortality as a human. Like, you're just like, oh my God. Like, and so I was a mess for 6 months, and I had some really, really, really dark times. And so I would write. And I remember, like, I wrote Awake. Awake was literally about conversations that I would have with Orlando. And I don't know if he had moved in by this point, because they were just like, we can't leave her by herself. Like, it was that bad. And he was just like, I would just be up. Like, my sleep schedule was just non-existent, and I would be up all night. And then when he would get up and go to work, or right before, like, he'd have like these 20 minutes, he'd lay in bed with me, and we would just have these talks. And it was all because of like the stuff that I was going through, grieving, or like the inter-family fighting that was going on, and the manipulations that were happening within the family, and like the fighting over money, and money that people weren't entitled to, and all that kind of stuff. And you're just going, like, your mind just goes, you literally go crazy for a little while. And I was literally having these crazy ass conversations with him, and he would just be like, like, he wouldn't be like, I think we need to get to, like, him and my mother were having conversations for sure. Like, they're like, I think she needs to talk to somebody, but they weren't saying it to, like, my mom.
To that notebook. You spoke to that
right.
notebook.
Well, what happened too was I went to therapy. Like, my mother was like, I really think that you need to get a therapist. Like, she's like, she's like, we're not professionals. Like, we don't know what to give you in this moment. We can't help you. And you go through all these different emotions of, like, rage. And I remember, like, we didn't resume the album. We didn't resume recording the album until like a year or 2 later, because we had to recover.
Wow.
We had to recover financially, because there were all these things that happened after my grandmother died. We had to sell our properties because she didn't handle her money right. And there were things that she did on an emotional level that she was like holding out hope for. And we were just like, babes, like, in terms of others of her children, she thought that they were gonna do the right thing when she passed. So she didn't get things in writing, and that didn't happen. And we ended up having to sell everything.
Wow.
And so I remember, like, our legacies, and you deal with that. Like, Black people don't own anything. We owned things, and we had to get things that had been in our family for generations. We had to sell, just so that we could survive. And I remember, like, we were selling, like, I was in Europe when we were going through that shit, and I was like so upset, because I think last time I had grown up in that house, like, and that to me was like, my dad was like, always like, I'm gonna give you that house when you get married and have kids. I want your kids to grow up here. You grew up here. I grew up here. Like, this
Mhm.
is our legacy. And I remember I cried like my eyes out when we sold that house, and because I used to call it my Never Never Land, because it was just so vast. And I remember we knew we were going to sell the house, and my grandmother had passed away there. And then we decided, my husband and I were like, we're going to get married here. I was like, we're not going to have the last thing happen in this house be a sad thing.
Yeah.
We're going to have a big ass party and we'll do the wedding here. And so that's the last thing we did before we sold it. And I remember thinking, like, all the things that we had to sacrifice. And my father, when he cut his checks, he was like, when you come back, we're going into the studio. And I was like, okay. Like, because I remember just being devastated about it,
Yeah.
and just being like, oh, yeah, my house, my house. And he was like, we'll get bigger and better when you start selling. Like, he's like, when your album comes out. And he was speaking things over me that I'm just like, I just be happy if people hear it. Like, he's like, no, people are gonna like this and it's gonna do well. He's like, you're gonna do really well overseas. Like, it's just like talking. And I was like, okay. But he was like, no, we're finishing this album and we're gonna give it the red carpet rollout. But it was literally the money. Like, once the money stopped, we had to stop everything. And it was something that was so unexpected, because we didn't know she was sick.
Mhm.
She never told us. I think she had like a fainting spell. And then that's how they were like, oh, something happened. We're like, something happened with grandma. We had to take her to the hospital. We're sure it's nothing. And then when she got there, they were like, well, she's had a stroke.
Mm.
Like, it was just a lot. And so that was definitely the hardest part of it. The writing, to me, there are times where I remember a while back, I went through like a dry spell for like 2-3 years. I couldn't write anything.
Mhm.
And then when I'm not going through that, like, I think there are times where I feel like when I'm at a level of contentment, I can't write. I can only write in chaos
Been
and
there.
like in destruction and pain. Like, I can write happy songs, but I don't have that many. Like, I'm like, how many times can I say I love you? Or how many
Yeah.
times am I going to talk about, how many times can I talk about that? I got a lot of songs about being angry, being a black and angry, and being a woman black and angry. I can write those songs. And so, like, once all that stuff happened, like with being homeless and you multiple times losing your grandmother and all of that, like, once it set in, I was like going through like pictures, and I was like, that woman literally helped raise me. Like, she's been here my whole life. And I remember the thing that put it into perspective for me was I was at the house, like, after she passed, we were doing like the funeral arrangements, and
Mhm.
one of her sisters called me, or she called the house, and she thought I was my aunt. And I was like, no, this is Tatiana. This is Rod's daughter. And I had never met her. I had never spoken to her on the phone. And she goes, I need to tell you something about your grandmother. And I was like, what? And she's like, she loved you so much. She's like, all she did was talk about you and about how I have a grandbaby who's a singer and an actress, and she did Dream Girls, and she's like, she kept all your programs. She would send us your programs. Like, she was so proud of you. And she's like, if you ever felt like she was hard on you, it's because she knew how strong you were. And she's like, it seemed like I would find things in her room, like she would write little prayers down.
Mhm.
And I found one of her prayers, and it was basically explaining that the kids that I thought were favorites, or that she showed favor to, she showed favor to them because she felt like they needed it. Whereas, like, and I've heard this all my life, oh, you got good parents, you're gonna be fine. Like, you got Rod and Gwen, you're good. Because there was I would ask her for stuff and she'd be like, no, I don't have money for that. And then she'd turn around and have bought it for another cousin, even though I had just asked for it. And I remember my father would go and buy me like the bootleg version. And I'm like, I don't want it. Like, I would be so upset. I'm like, I don't want it. You remember when the scooters came out?
Oh yeah,
And
I
they
had
had
a
like
off brand one.
right. And they had the different color wheels. And I was like, I don't want this one. And it was literally the same thing. It just didn't have the same sticker.
It wasn't Razor. It was
right,
not.
right. I was like, I don't want this one. And Dad was like, who is the same thing? It's not the same. And I was like losing my mind. Remember, he paid like $40 for it. And I remember one day we were sitting in the living room. Now, I literally asked my grandmother for this. And she's like, Rod, how much did you pay for that scooter? And he was like $40. And she was like, I paid $80 for that. And I remember sitting there like, you said you didn't have any money. Like, I was so upset. And I remember when I was standing there, like going through her stuff, thinking like, oh my God, like, it's still not fair, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
She's like, the other grandkids had a harder way to go with their parents. And she knew I had good parents who were always going to take care of me no matter what. And so she was overcompensating with them. And once I realized that, I felt like shit, because I was just like, I was still mad though, because she wasn't someone, we did not have conversations. Like she never came out and said to me, Tati, like, these kids,
they needed more than you.
Right. And she had just said, like, your mother, I always thought that she didn't like my mother. Like, there was always some level of animosity between them. And it was just because, like, my she's outspoken. She's like, what did you say to me? Like, she doesn't let anything go. And she's just very passionate. And, like, she talks with her hands. And my grandmother was very laid back and demure and, like, just proper. And I just didn't get it. And then when it was over with, I was just like, I got off the phone with my grand aunt and she was like, oh my God, like, she just loved you so much. And we know about you. Like, I had never met any of them. She's like, we know you. Okay. She's like, we know who you are. Okay. And she was like telling me like family secrets and what my grandmother's dying wishes were. Like, she was like, sure. She was like, make sure you do such and such. Okay. I was like, she wants me to do that.
Thank you for saying such and such. You don't need to tell all your family.
Right.
Save it for the memoir.
No, but it was just hilarious because she was like, she wants you to do this. And I was like, oh, thanks. Like, I was like, I always got to be the bad guy. Like, I was like, well, they were like, Tatiana's going to take care of that. And I remember we did 2 services for her, and I sang at both her funerals, which was special requested.
Okay.
I always used to get hired as the person singing at a funeral and a show. Like,
it's got to be difficult, but
I would literally get the job. What are you doing next week? Nothing. We need somebody to come sing in a funeral scene. What song do you want to sing? Precious Lord. Okay. Like, Nesmith's show, Amen Corner. God, Blues for Mr. Charlie, which we did all summer long. And then there was another show, and they were just like, Tati is your girl. You need somebody to sing at the funeral. Let's get Tatiana. Like, come on. And I would literally come in and sing Precious Lord. And every time we have a show, my grandmother would come to every show, and we'd be leaving. And she'd be like, the way you sang Precious Lord? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I want you to do it like that at my funeral. And I'm like, Grandma. Like, she's like, I'm going to go. You know how grandparents are. I'm going to go someday. And whenever God's ready to take me, I'll be ready to go. You going to sing the song. And I remember we did the funerals, and I was just like, this is a real funeral. Like, I'm singing at the funeral. And it wasn't hard, though. I think because people were saying to me, they were like, I would think it would be hard to do that. And I'm like, it's not, because that's what you wanted. Yeah. It's harder I sang at other people's funerals. That's hard. Because overcome with emotion. But for that, it was like, we're gonna get up here and do it just as this is what grandma wanted, and we're just gonna do it for her. It wasn't hard because it was like, this is what she asked me to do, and I cannot fuck up. I can be emotional at the last note and cry when it's over, but we're gonna sing it right now. And so like that's why we released the album on her birthday.
I was going to ask you
Yes.
what was the significance of when, because at the time of this recording, we're still in phases of reopening,
Yes.
and we are under some form of quarantine and lockdown and social distancing. Have to make sure that we let people know if they're watching this years later. This was a very interesting time that you
in the
released.
middle of a whole pandemic, y'all.
So, like, why did you decide to go ahead and do that? Well, now that you mentioned her birthday.
Mhm.
But you
So
could have still pushed it because it's
right,
not the right time. So why did you
right.
say, I'm doing it?
Well, we had already started releasing the singles, and initially I feel like we were going to release it before that, and the dates didn't have any significance, right? And then we were going to have like an album release party. We're going to have a whole rollout, and things started shutting down. And my father called me, and he was like, I think that we should push the album back. And I was like, okay, well, what did you have in mind? And he was like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to push it out in March. And he was like, of course, if we wait, and it'll be your grandmother's birthday by then. And I was like, you know what? That's perfect. In the moment, like it was me rushing again, right? I was like, let me get this out. Well, these singles are out. Get this album out. I don't have anything to say on social media. I'm tired of posting out my cute outfit. I want to be of substance, and this whole thing, I literally feel like we initially, point blank period, the reason we pushed it is because we were just like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know how long this is going to take. We don't know how long we're going to be like this. Why not, capitalize on the fact that people are going to be home and listen to this music. They're going to be able to listen to the music because they'll be home. So we were just like, we're just going to put it out. And then when we were looking at the dates and how they lined up with like, numbers and things like that. And he was like, so he gave me the options of the days we could drop it. And he was like, April 9th, though, is your grandmother's birthday. And I was like, that's the day. That's the day we're doing it. We went, the album cover, I'm standing in a field of sunflowers. And we went to the sunflower field upstate New York. And it was like almost the end of summer. And we had been trying to get to this sunflower field. We were having some terrible weather like at the end of the summer. It just was raining on and off. And this was like the last day to go. And I remember my dad is someone who was like, the weather, hold on, let me get my charger. He's like, the weather, he's like, it's gonna rain. He's one of those guys. He'd be like, it's gonna rain. I don't know, right? And then this particular day, I was like, Dad, it might rain. And he was like, I don't care. He was like, it might rain, it might not rain. He's like, but the only way to know is if we get in our car, we go. If we go and it rains, we won't go. But if we go and it doesn't rain, we'll get the pictures. And it wasn't, I don't know if it was for an album cover or not, but it was just the fact of, we need to be in a field of sunflowers, God damn it. Like, I need to be in a field of sunflowers right now. And we took the dogs with us. And my dad's dog, Coco, was dying. And we were like, we gonna give this dog the last hoorahs of her life. Like, we took her everywhere. She didn't pass until January this year, but we didn't know. Like, the doctors were like, could be now, could be 6 months. Like, we don't know. So we're like, we're gonna get all of this in. And so we all went. It's really funny because my parents have been divorced since I was 3 years old. They had this conversation, like, my mom was like, the weather. He's like, when we're going to the sunflower field, I'm gonna call the kids and we're going. So it's like me, my mother, my dad, my husband, Zola and Coco, who are the dogs, and we all in the car, and we drove up to the sunflower field. We all got out, and I had my camera with me, and I had Orlando take pictures of us. And like we all took turns taking pictures of each other. And so then the album cover, Orlando took that.
Beautiful.
And I remember like looking at the picture, and I was just like, I hate you. Like he's one of those people who's just like good at a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll pick up something. Like I remember I was trying to teach myself guitar, and I get mad. I just like I can't, and I throw it. I'll be like, fuck this. He picks up the guitar, and he's just like bling bling bling. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, what? He's like, this is how you do it? I was like, you know what? Get out my face. And so when we bought the professional camera, I think I bought the camera so that I could do self-tapes. That's what it started off as. And then I was like, we're just going to take the camera with us. I don't know why, but we're going to take it. We're not going to use our phones if we don't want. I remember I had Orlando with the camera, Mommy on the side with the phones, like taking pictures with the phones. And when we got these pictures back, I was posting them on the family chat, and they were like, that's the one. They were like, that's the album cover right there. And I think I had posted it on Instagram, and I was like, heaven be a sea of sunflowers or something like that. Because it was just one of those days where it was just like, I am truly in the midst of God's work. Like, how is it? And it just went on forever. It was a sea of sunflowers that went on forever. And they only charged us like $3 to get in. And you could take all the sunflowers you wanted with you. And it was just a beautiful day, and it didn't rain until we got in the car. We were leaving.
That's divine timing, if anything.
Right. He was like, see? And we're driving back. He's like, see, I told you. And it rained like really bad for like 5 minutes. And then the sun came out. And by then we were already on the highway. And he was like, I told you guys. I told you. And it was just one of those things where everything that we've done for this album, it's literally felt like in the moments, like it took so long. I remember being embarrassed because it took me 5 years to put out an album. And I had a conversation with one of my friends, Steph Reed, who's like amazing creative and musician. And he was like, it took me 5 years to put my album out. Like, he's like, that's what it is when you're an independent artist. Like, he's like, there's nothing. He's like, you have to remember that labels, like artists who are repped with labels, like they have labels paying for everything.
Yeah.
He's like, there's nothing wrong with taking your time. Like he literally was like, don't feel bad about taking your time. He's like, people, when you rush through shit, people can tell.
Yeah. And
so I remember like when the album had come out, the videos had been finished for a while. And I was just like, what are we doing? You know, like again, rushing. I was like, what are we doing? And after we released the album, right? One day I was sitting I was like doing one of my soaks, and I was listening to Awake. And I was listening to the words, and I was just like, this shit was supposed to come out now. Like it came out when it was supposed to come out, because there are literally things I was like, I wrote a song 3 or 4 years ago about something that is happening right now. And I called my mom. I was like, oh my God. She was like, what's the matter? I was like, I can't believe I wrote that song. And she was like, well, what do you mean? Like, and at the time when I wrote Awake, there were certain lines that I didn't understand. Like, was it feels like I'm young, but I'm older. I had no idea what that meant. Like, I was literally just like, I'm just a vessel. I'm just
songwriting spirit. You don't know where it's gonna come from.
Right. I was like, I'm gonna do whatever's happening. I'm just gonna write what it is, what I'm feeling. And my mom was like, well, what do you think it means now? And I was like, well, you know how when you're a kid and you get grounded, like, and you can't leave your room, feels like I'm young, but I'm older. Like I'm grown and I can go the fuck I want. No, I can't. I need to stay in the house. I can't go no damn where.
Literally.
Right. I was like, I can't go no damn where. Or it feels like I'm living in the end of days. Like 2020.
Feels like a zombie movie. Like we were just the one piece that's just not there is the zombies, but everything else is
Child.
leading up to.
Right. Like when they started talking about the aliens, I was like, this is the time. Come on out. Just come on out. Just come
So
on.
after all that you've been through to get the album out, my last question on it, what's the most rewarding part of this whole process for you?
Having people like you text me and say, "Oh my God, this song is my jam," or "This song is telling this is my testimony," or like I remember when IDCU came out. And we were like to me, IDCU was like my life. Like IDCU was my jam. I was like, yeah, like, like I wrote that song at 5 o'clock in the morning after watching Tamar and Vince. I don't know why. Don't ask.
Shout out to Tamar.
Tamar, I don't know. Don't ask me why. I don't know. It's just, and it was like I had quit a job or something, and I had worded. I didn't quit, but I was basically making the announcement that I was basically giving like my notice.
Okay.
And I was like, at the end of the day, I said what I needed to say. And I literally put that in the letter, in the email. And then I was just like, wait, you need to use this.
No, you did not.
I swear to God. I swear to God, that was in the email. I was like, at the end of the day, I said what I needed to say, and I hope that you can respect that. And God bless. Thank you for the opportunities that you've given me. But like in the moment, I was feeling like I was like so unappreciated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started writing, right? And I started thinking about like my previous breakup and all the bullshit that I had gone through in that relationship, and I was just like, and I remember, like, what was it? Samantha Jones says, "I love you, but I love me more," and that's where that came from. Like, one of us has got to lose. It ain't finna be me. And I think the second verse was all Tamar. Like, I don't know where it was going. You breaking my heart with you don't leave. And I remember when I wrote it, like I was singing it in the Tamar voice. And I had got up and left the room because Orlando was sleeping because he had to get up and go to work. So I was in the kitchen, right? And I was like writing it down. And he comes in the kitchen, what the fuck are you doing? It was like 4:30. And he had probably gotten up to take a shower and realized I wasn't there and like heard me and came in the kitchen and was like, I was like, I'm writing a song. Right? And that song, when I tell you, I sang that song for years because like I wrote it down, I recorded the voice notes so I would not forget what it sounded like. I recorded the background harmonies before I ever had an idea of what studio I was going to. I was like, we are not forgetting this song. And then when it came out and people started DMing me or reposting it, or Tasha, shout out to Natasha Lynn, sent it to one of her girlfriends, right? Mm-hmm. And she sent me a screenshot of her girlfriend. Who is that? Girl, that song. Like she said something about this song is helping me because I be dealing with Leroy tired ass. Something like that's awesome. That, like stuff like that. I was just like, all I cared about was that it was going to speak to someone, especially like what we're going through right now, not just with the pandemic, but with the protests and the killings. I have been going through, I've been texting you all week. I've been going through it. And it's because I've been feeling things that I can't vocalize. I've been crying all week. I've been telling my husband, I was like, how do you express a feeling you can't name? Because you're feeling it all.
It's vicarious trauma.
It all right. And I'm so grateful to my fellow songwriters and rappers and freestyle artists that are like putting music out like with the quickness. Like they're putting stuff out that is relaying the emotion because you don't have the words for it. Like when all this stuff started happening again, because it's never not happening. It's always happening. But I look back, it was the first incident was with the shooting of Ahmaud when the young man who was killed while jogging. Mm-hmm. I didn't say anything. When they killed Breonna, I didn't say anything. George Floyd, I didn't say anything. I couldn't watch the videos. So people were like sending a video. I can't watch videos. I can't watch videos of us being murdered anymore. Like I just can't. And I remember feeling so numb. And I remember, you know, like I'm sure people were like, Tatiana's not. I couldn't. It was like I had shut that part of me down because as Black people, we struggle so much in every single thing. Like we're going through, people have no idea what it is to be a Black person. We carry that stuff with us in our DNA. We are carrying the burdens of our ancestors with us before we even get out of bed in the morning. That shit is in our blood. There are things that we understand and know without being said that other races will never know. There's a way that, you know, certain people speak to us that we know is coded. We know what they're really saying. And it's all of that trauma and having to deal with that and still try to be a regular person, living your life, paying your bills, walking down the street, buying your groceries, and having to deal with people having a problem with you for no other reason than you're fucking magical. Like I can't help that I'm just me. Like I can't help that. And that as a people, you brought us here to do the work for you, right? And now we're in the middle of a pandemic where legally we can't, right? We've all been ordered inside and you can't figure it out. You can't figure it out. You can't figure out how to get your hair done, your nails done, none of that. But we have already figured it out because we are the race of figuring shit out. We are the kings and queens of the pivot. We've been pivoting since we got here. And you're mad about...
lies detected.
You're right. You're mad about basic stuff, right? And it's just like, I don't know, like, it's just heavy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like when I hear a song, like a couple of my friends have been putting out songs, like Hollywood put out, I don't want to lie, his song is A Different World. And the catchphrase on that is, can you relate? And then we have Venor put out, Venor Yard put out, We'll Get Through This. And he literally, that song, all that song is like, it's like 3-4 words. It's we'll get through this, or we'll get through. And he's just calling out the mother, brother, father, we'll get through. I heard that song one time and I was just on the floor. I was like, nah! We have I've heard a freestyle from a friend of mine, Luce, today. He did a freestyle over Michael Jackson's They Don't Really Care About Us.
We're going to need these links in the description.
I was throwing shoes at...
We link out to everybody.
I was throwing things. I was like, sir! Because it's just it's so multi-layered. And so when you have people that have done that for you, you know, but you're like, I couldn't speak. Like I couldn't profess my emotions with my mouth. And you did it for me. Thank you. And then you have people saying that to you. Like that's the biggest honor. Honestly, I would love like to be on a major scale and, you know, internationally have people be like, yes. My biggest goal is to be able to like go to Europe and still be dig through your trash famous, but be able to come back to the Bronx and live in obscurity. Like I just want people don't know anything about who I am. I can still go to the mall and still walk down the street and go to the supermarket and all that, and then go to your like.
You are on your way there, I will say. I love the album. I loved it from jump all the way through. It has a great flow. Let's get into our final, because this is the Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. Yes. So our questions are related to each of those things. The first one is, who is your biggest inspiration?
My God. Okay, so I thought about this question a lot. I would have to say that my family, I know this sounds cheesy, but my family are like my biggest inspirations, right? So we have my mom, who is just a fucking superhero. And I've watched her go through some things over the past couple of years that I feel like if it were me going through it, it probably would have broken me. And she still like gets up every day and it's just like, I'm fucking fabulous. Like, she never looks like what she's going through. And she's always raised me to be a person or a woman who is strong and, you know, just overall like a compassionate, loving person, but don't get me fucked up. Like, that's her. She'll give you her last, but don't get her fucked up, period. And then my father is like, I think about when he was younger, he wanted to be a musician. And it just didn't happen for him that way. And I think about the fact that he must have looked at me as a child, as a baby, you know, and was like, oh, she likes singing. Like, by any means necessary, she's going to have whatever she wants or needs. And he went to work. He worked for the post office. He went and got this job at the post office right around the time I was born. And he worked there until I was in Europe. He retired while I was in Europe. And he said, I took that job to take care of you and make sure that you had everything that you needed and make sure, like, and that's why he goes so hard, is because he felt like his parents didn't do it like that for him. He's like, my parents didn't take care of me in this way. And, you know, treat him as like, you have dreams and goals, you know, like they didn't take care of him like that. And he was like, I was never going to ever allow you to have the kind of upbringing I had, because I felt so stifled and like, you know, fuck it, you know? Yeah. So he's like, so I took that job so that you could soar. And I remember when, like, I was in high school, he would always talk about, you know, doing music and recording things and going to labels and stuff. And then I remember when he decided that we should just stay independent. And he was just like, you know what, Tati, like, we don't really need a label. They're going to take, you know, the money anyway. And we can do this all ourselves. Like, we don't need anybody, you know, like, we don't need a big label behind us. We can do this ourselves. And the fact that he went to college so that he could help me. Like, that man has made his whole life about me. I'm his only child. And I don't know any man who have done that. Anybody. And it's funny because, like, all my aunties, they'll be like, yo, you have a good dad. Like, that means like, your father, okay, your father is, because, child, y'all know the stuff that I went through with me. Like, they always, it's funny because whenever they're like, how is your father? Tell him I said hello. Like, they love him. Yeah. He's genuinely like a good man. Like, nobody's perfect, obviously, but he is like perfection. My husband, who I met when I was like at 19, we were babies. And we did not get together like most people do. And we were kind of like we were each other's rebounds, and we didn't think we were gonna be serious. I didn't think we were gonna be serious, and I was like trying not to, you know, be the girl like to call and all that. And I remember one day he called me and he was like, "What the hell?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "I haven't heard from you like in a couple of days." And I was like, "I don't know how this goes. Like, I don't know. Am I supposed to call you? I don't want to be needy. Like, I don't know how to handle this, you know?" And he was like, we slept together. And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "You're my girlfriend." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, he's like, "I don't just go around sleeping with people." Okay. I was like, "I didn't know. I'm sorry. Okay, no problem. No, cool. I'm good. I'm straight." Because honestly, I wanted to date him, but I didn't want to be like the person to be like trying to move fast. Like, I was trying to like be chill with it. And he's somebody who, like, people don't realize is like, if you have an artist, whether it be a man or a woman, right? That's the artist. They always have somebody behind them, keep holding them up, right? And I remember, like, when we got together, I used to like quit jobs. Like, I was like, "This isn't serving me. I'm quitting," right? And I would be like, they wouldn't let me go to an audition. They wouldn't give me the day off for an audition, so I quit. Like, I would quit jobs at the drop of a hat. I'm like, "What?" I quit, and I would walk out. Orlando has been working since he was 14 years old.
Oh my God.
This man has never not had a job. He actually likes working. He likes to go to work. He loves it. He hated being on quarantine. He was like, "I want to go back to work." Like, he's stability. And I think that people take that for granted, having a man that I remember when we were talking about getting married, we talked about it for a long time. And I was like, "I don't want to get married because I'm not going to fulfill those expectations. Like, I'm not going to get a job, or I will quit a job, you know, like,
keep it real if that's your
I'm
truth.
not gonna, because at the time I was living with my mom, and I think the only bill I had to pay was like my phone bill. Like, that was it. I was like, I'm not gonna get a job to pay bills. Like, I'm not gonna get a job to do any of that stuff, because if it's gonna affect my artistry, if it's gonna keep me from being able to build my resume by doing shows, you know, as actors, we take a lot of free shit to build our resumes because we need the credentials. Sometimes the credential is worth more than the pay.
Yeah.
And so you will take the L time after time till your resume gets to a certain point. And I remember for years, I was just like, I think when I was at H&M and I had gotten to a place where management, like, my managers, most of them, like, they loved me. And so they were like, "Nah, let her chill, let her rock, like, let her do her thing. She works, she does the job of 5 people in here. Let her go, let her live her life." And then after, like, I transferred and all that, like, I just was like, I'm not gonna, you're gonna get upset because you're gonna be working, and I'm not gonna be having a conventional job, if you will. And he was like, "I don't care." I remember he was like, "We need to move in together," because we were living with my mom. We had all this space. It wasn't like we were on top of each other. He was like, "No, I want you and me alone in our own apartment. The two, we need to make a go of it. Like, we need to make a life. We need to start living. We need to start doing things as a married couple. We need to be adults." And I was like, "I'm not getting a job." He's like, "I don't care." I will never forget that day where he finally was like, "I don't care. I'll pay for everything. Like, we just need to do it." I was like, "Are you sure? Because in 3 years, it might be the same."
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, "I don't care." So he's definitely an inspiration because he's someone that I go hard for. Like, my goal is to let him retire. Even though he likes going to work, I don't know what he's gonna
Speak
do.
it into existence. Just
But
go on an endless vacation.
right, my goal is to let him retire and like open up like a collector's or comic book store or something like that where he can do his passion. And then finally it would be his little sister, Omari. She is 21 or 22.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known her since she was 8 years old. And she is one of these, we're millennials. I don't know what she is. She's younger than us. Is she what, Generation Z?
She might be Z or on the cusp of between.
Right. She is someone I remember, like, she was like, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God, and I believe that, there is something, but I don't, like, she comes with all these you're like, she comes with all these new things, like, I feel like I'm my mother or my grandmother when I'm talking to her, because some of the stuff sometimes she'll be like, I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, but she's just so open-minded. And I remember she's like, I protest, I I make signs, I go on marches, I'm a vegan. Like, she took all this stuff. Or rather, now she has vegan tendencies, which is more along the lines of me. But she's like, gives me hope. Like, I look at her and I'm just like, we're okay. We're gonna be okay. Like, she's in that line of, we're not taking this shit. Like, that's her. She's like, we're not doing this. What? We're not doing this anymore. But she's so subtle with it. Like, she's never trying to force her agenda on anybody. And she's never trying to change your mind. Right? And it's funny is because in the time of just spending time with her, you come to understand, like, why she feels the way she does about religion. And I remember one day she called me and she was like, she said something to me that led me to believe that she was coming a little closer to Jesus. And she was just like, yeah. Like, she said something and I was like, okay, all right, sit. But at the same time, it's like she rubs off on me as well. And it's just looking at her, I think about, like, she's always so positive. Like, no matter, even she rarely ever gets upset, but even when she's mad, like, she still has a positive outlook, and she's one of these people who's not afraid. She's one of these women who's not afraid. To like, she's just so forward, forward thinking. And, like, we have conversations and she'll just be like, yeah, she's like, something about women are supposed to have orgasms or something like that. Like, but she's 21 or 22 and you're just like, it's my family. Like, looking at them and I'm just like, I'm so good. Like, I'm so okay. And then, like, musician wise, like, just for creative sakes, I would have to say it's like my fellow independent artists, who are just out there getting it and never giving up. Like, it's not a lot of us out there still doing this. Like, if you look at the people who I went to high school with, even if they're not all singers, even the actors, like, there's only a handful of us still trying. And it's crazy because you'll see, like, your friend, like, finally getting, like, on TV or getting on a series or getting, like, and it seems to other people that this shit happens overnight, and it's just like, no, we graduated from high school in 2005.
You wish somebody would say your overnight success. Like,
right.
Forget about all that I've done, all the
right. And we've been grinding since 2005. Or when did we graduate college? We've been grinding since 2011. Like, and I remember when I watched David Makes Man, and one of my friend Dave, the one with the red locks, he like plays one of the villains on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I like DM'd him and I was like crying at the season finale. I was like, oh my God, King, like, I'm just so proud of you. So proud. Or when Novi got on Sister, and I was just like, oh my God, I just remember everything. Like, we were like DMs, like, I just remember everything you went through. You worked so hard for this.
I think that's the best feeling, just kind of all of our classmates, whenever we see somebody make it, we're very proud of them.
Yes.
And we have to make it a point to message them and say, hey, I may not have spoken to you in a few years.
I see you.
But I appreciate the fact that you have taken that time and you've been hustling
Right,
this long and on your grind.
right, because it can get so hard. Just the living, like just the living situations. You can I can 100% and totally understand why people just give up,
Yeah.
because you go through years of instability, and you have to be, what is my friend again, Steph Reed, who's an independent artist who's been doing this forever. He's actually helped launch careers of people that are out, and he's like still touring, still independent, makes all his own music. And he said you have to be your biggest cheerleader even in obscurity. He's like, even when no one is, even if it's just you.
Perfect
He's like,
segue to our next
yes,
question.
yes.
So, who do you hope to uplift with your work?
I hope to uplift anybody who is having, anyone who's having a hard time, anyone who has like lost hope. These songs, I literally wrote these songs like I wrote my way out of the darkness. There were times where I literally thought that I was going to kill myself. And I would have those moments. I would be sitting like wherever I was usually on the floor in a corner, crying my eyes out and thinking about like, this is it. This is it. This is what we're going to do. And then a song would come to me. And I'd be like, okay, I got to go write that song. And that would be the thing that took me out of the moment. I would have to get up off the floor to go get my phone or go get a pen and paper so I could write the lyrics down. I hope to uplift little Black girls all over the world who, especially the ones who haven't had like the family or the parents that I've been fortunate to have.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to have, it helps. Don't get me wrong, it helps, but you don't need them if it's meant to happen. I think about all the times I've tried to quit and literally out of my control, something turns me around. I always end up coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how long you stay away from it, if it's in you, if it's your calling, if it's who you're supposed to be, you're never going to be able to walk away from it. And I think about like any time that I've ever been like, oh, I just can't do this anymore, because the rejection is like hard. And then you realize you're not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it, rather, I should say, you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for others. Right. So like, I know I always said like when I was younger and I was like, oh, I want a record deal and I want to be famous and all this. At a certain point, it stopped being about that and it started being about healing.
Yeah.
Right? If you're in a moment and all you can do is sing a song, like I would literally hold myself and sing myself until whatever was happening was over. And so it would be, if it's about healing now. It's not about being famous. It's not about accolades. I love accolades. You can give them to me. But that's not why I'm doing it, right? I'm doing it because I literally can't do anything else.
So, how do you stay engaged with that motivation?
Oh, I'm broke, so I don't have a choice. Like, I'm always engaged. Like, it's not I don't want to say it's not about motivation, because if I'm being honest, I'm really chill these days. Like, I'm done like a complete flip from high school Tatiana, who was like always rushing and always in a hurry. I literally adopted the belief that if it's mine, I just gotta be waiting for it and ready to receive. I don't have to go nowhere. And I think it's because that's just been the way that things have happened for me. I think that you have to get used to certain things that have happened in your journey and notice when they're reoccurring.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I remember I used to have the hardest time dealing with like the downtime when you're not doing anything and you put your worth in being busy, right? And then when you're busy, you're just like, I just would kill for a nap. Like, I would just kill for a nap right now. And I remember I would be so busy that I would be going from one job to the next, crying because I just was exhausted. Like, it's like, have you had a nap today? Like,
you need one.
What? Really? That's me. That is me. That is me. I start getting frazzled. My husband comes. He's like, come on, babe. Put me in the bed. Here's some tea. Move you some tension tea. And he'll like, just take a nap. You just need to lay down. That's literally me. And so I remember like when we go on tour, right? And you're like living the high of being I went to Paris, not Paris. No, I didn't go to Paris. I went to the country in France and Poland and Portugal and Spain. You have all these experiences and you're like, oh my God, I was in places that they talk about on TV. And you go through that whole high. And the high of being on stage and having people love you and having people come down and want your autograph and want to take pictures with you and living that whole life. And then you come home and you're just like, the cat is like, bitch, where's my food? Or you're picking up dog shit. Because your animals don't give a fuck. Like, they're like, you could win as many Grammys as you win. You still got to pick up my shit and you still got to feed me. And I'm not eating this if there are no peas or sweet potatoes on it. And you're like, what am I going to do now? Like, and you go into this depression because you're like, I was jet setting and I was a superstar. And now I can't get a job and nobody will hire me. I'm going on auditions and I can't. And I've learned to accept, like, you have to have both. You have to have the come down. Like, you have to have the calm down, the cool down, the relax, the chill. You need that shit because you need to rest for when your wave comes so that you can catch the wave. Because you're going to be on that shit for a while and you're going to be tired again and you're going to want a nap. So, like, I just feel like people need to, I want people to know that it's okay. You know, it's okay to fail. Failing is good. It means you're trying. And don't get discouraged by like the no's you're going to be told no. You're going to get a yes. And then it'll be your first yes in a year. It'll be your major yes. And then the coronavirus will come along and cancel all of your shit. You know, like I booked my first off-Broadway job ever. And I had been with my agent for a year and we had been auditioning for a year nonstop. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't booked anything. And we just going out and going and going and going. I finally booked something. And the virus happens and shuts down everything. Wow. And it was my first theater job in a year. And I was like, it's funny because I wasn't as mad about it as I thought I was gonna be. Like I did like have my moment, like, oh God, you know, like I have my little ooh. But I literally was sitting there like, but what can you do about this? Like what can you do? You got just be grateful in the fact that I think it was a job where I walked in. I'm someone who walked into an audition. I went in there with my nose, my septum ring, mm-hmm. and like my makeup and my fluff, like my yaki wig, all my jewelry on. And it's usually like I've had some people say, oh, you don't want to go in there doing too much, you know, because it'll distract them from. Then I go in there and I'm me, whatever that is that day. And if you want to hire me, we can talk about costumes later. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that was the first day I went in there, and I was just like, and I had messed up in the audition, but I recovered. I figured it out, and I was like, you know what? I was like, can we just stop for 2 seconds and start over? Because I'm just not feeling that. Let me just do it again. And it was the first time that I won't do that because I'll be so afraid. And I had booked that job. I was literally went in there. I didn't want to go to the audition. I had PMS. I had cramps. I did not give a shit. And I walked in there and I was just like, it is what it is. I was still like my bubbly self, but I just didn't care. And when I walked out, I was like, I think I did okay. Like I felt good. And I was like, but I never expect to get a job anymore because you just get so used to being told no. And there's millions of Black girls auditioning, and this was for Sisters, which is like it's a Black musical. So all the Black actresses in New York have auditioned for this show. So if I don't get called, it's fine.
Yeah.
And my agent was like, "You booked the job." I was like, "Am I getting punked?" Like I kept asking her, I was like, "Are you serious? You're not playing with me?" And she's like, "No, you booked the job. Congratulations." And then my run was supposed to be from the end of May to like mid-June. And what did they first? They were like, "Oh, well, we're gonna do the quarantine until May 15th, right?" And so I was like, "Okay, I might still be good. I might still be okay." And then they're like, "Nah, we're just gonna cut it all the way until June." And I was like, "Well," and the thing is like I didn't even get to sign my contract or anything. So I don't get a guarantee that when Off Broadway opens up again, that I'm gonna get a job. I'm not guaranteed that job. I'm probably not gonna see any money. Like anything. It's just like a thing that happens. And you just have to figure it out. Like the takeaway from that was like I booked my first Off Broadway show. And I did it with my septum ring. Like
As yourself.
As myself. I went
go.
there as myself. I didn't have to put on airs that day. And that's what's like the thing that you go through in this industry. You go through some ups and downs. You go through some catapults, some flips. You get thrown off of shit a bunch of times. And then and especially if you're doing that while Black, again, it's the whole nother story. There are things like there are microaggressions and all kinds of stuff that you're gonna have to deal with, and you just have to learn how to deal with it. Yeah.
So with all that and everything kind of up in the air, what can we expect next from you?
Well, I've been writing a lot of songs lately just about this situation. So the hope is to be able to get together and with my band and my family and work on those songs and put them out.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I'm not rushing anything. I'm just really trying to keep my mind. We've definitely been pushing the album and just been really happy with the response that we're getting in terms of listeners around the world in general and the following that we're getting. Right now, I just want people to hear the music. I want people to hear the music, love the music, share the music. And I'm trying to see if I can work some things out overseas. But everything is like really like in the beginning phases of stuff. So right now we're just trying to get the exposure out and try to like build teams internationally.
Nice.
So that we can working on my
expand the reach.
Right. Working on my reach. But I definitely have been moved by everything that's going on. So I'm trying to really get together and and put those songs out. I think so far I've written like maybe 3 or 4 songs. So I'm really trying, and I just want to be like, you're like trying to write and trying to keep my mind through all of this, because I think people don't realize, like, as we're in quarantine, which means we haven't been able to see or embrace or hug or see our family. Like, I haven't hugged my father in 3-4 months. I don't remember the last time I hugged my father. I've seen him, but he won't hug me because he's like afraid, he doesn't want to get me sick.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to put you at risk. And I'm like, I don't, you don't care about that. And he's like, no. So like that, all that stuff, the lack of intimacy and touch can take its toll, and not being face to face like we are, and being loud and getting together and having fun, that can take its toll on you. And then on top of that, not like and then having the protest. and the cop killings. And it seems like the shit is just getting worse. Like there's more and more of that happening now. So I'm just trying to write as much as I can, and like just make sure that I'm keeping in touch with everybody and trying to check in with everybody and make sure everybody's good, and just trying to wait it out. Essentially, my dad was upset because the other day he said that he's like, "You're doing so well in LA that we could have done a sold out show over there at the Troubadour," because the Troubadour is like where I'm trying to be. Like I'm trying to get in there. And he was like, "We could have done a show at the Troubadour." And I was just like, "Dad, it's fine. Like, it's fine. Like, it's gonna be okay." Like, I'm trying to work on a merch store.
All right.
So like I'm trying to be like you. I got my t-shirts. So I'm trying to come out with a line. I've got some t-shirts, and then I'm trying to get like my hands on a sewing machine because I want to do like masks as well. So I'm trying. Like this whole situation has really kicked in my creativity. Maybe I'll put some paintings up there. I know you want one. I know you've been wanting a painting.
Yes. Anything creative from you, I'm gonna want some.
Well, I got some, so I will. I'm just trying to like not to get too bogged down, because your creative juices get flowing, and you're like, and this and this and this and this, and you're trying to like stay. I'm just trying to stay organized and try not to like burn out. So there's a lot and nothing happening.
Thank you so much for joining us. Just for the last thing, how do people get in contact with you? Let us know all your handles, anything you want to plug, websites. Okay. Lay it all out. It will also include it in the description box.
So I'm not gonna give y'all. Y'all could just follow me at Instagram at I am Tatiana Scott. Because 9 times out of 10, everything you need to know is going to be on there anyway. And I have a Tatiana Scott fan page on Facebook as well. Okay. Those are my 2 mains. And then if you want to see footage of my performances, you can go to my YouTube channel, Tatiana Scott, as well. So that's it. That's pretty much it. Go watch my videos, please, on YouTube because I need some more views.
Yes, definitely.
But that's it. And I just ultimately, if you haven't heard The Beautiful Struggle yet, check it out. I think it's a great effort of love. There's a lot of love in that album, and it's something.
We feel it. If you've heard the album, you know.
There's something for everybody on there.
So we appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you,
once again, Tatiana Scott.
I love you.
Right.
Thank you.